Hi everyone, please subscribe to my channel. Blood Immortal. See playlist for other chapters and novels. Join now our Telegram channel now and enjoy exclusive early access. t.me/blood_immortal_official. I do not translate the novels. Credits goes to original translator and author of the novel. I only make it as an audiobook so it would be easier to just listen while doing other things. Credits goes to the author of the novel. I convert stories to audiobook for mental health, for multitasking purpose, for accessibility and time saving. Listening to audiobook is also beneficial for people who have disability. It improves our listening skills and improve our English comprehension, vocabulary and other things. So, thank you for listening. Thank you and thank you very much for your support. Chapter 881. This is one hell of a tragic tempo. Chapter 881. This is one hell of a tragic tempo. Lin Fan raised his head and looked up at the void. The fight between two powerful beings was truly mind-blowing. Every single palm strike could cleave the entire world apart. The berserk amount of power unleashed was extremely ferocious. Lin Fan could not help but realize that he wasn't comparable to that level yet. The fight between Death Demonic God and the Fire Water Empress was something that was entirely catastrophic. This was no longer something that Lin Fan could interfere with at all. Looking at these two violent chicks fighting had Lin Fan thoroughly engrossed in it as well. But, now was not the time for him to be addicted to this fight. He had to think up of a way to escape. Lin Fan struggled with all his might. For a moment or so, he truly could not struggle to get out of the chains. Holy FCK, this is truly not giving anyone any bit of chance. Lin Fan was indignant in his heart. He then summoned out Flying Heavens straight after. Flying Heavens started revolving, trying to saw these chains apart. Sparks flew out everywhere, but even after a long time, nothing seemed to have been broken at all. Holy FCK, just how tough is this sh*t? How does anyone even play with sh*t like this? Lin Fan could not help but admit defeat. This thing truly left one with no chances. Bam! At this moment, the void exploded out violently. The fight between the Fire Water Empress and the Death Demonic God caused all void to shatter apart, and countless vortices to appear. These vortices were extremely horrifying, and the void currents that burst forth from within were even more berserk. The void currents that were once seen in the past were nothing compared to these ones right here. Fire Water Empress, this is the toy of your demonic god here. What are you trying to do? Right now, the Death Demonic God was still losing control of her sanity to Bigra. Therefore, it was only natural for her to find it unbearable that someone would try to snatch her toy away. HMPH. That's the exclusive property of your Empress here. For now and all of eternity. If you dare to lay your hands on him, you shall pay with your life. The Fire Water Empress was domineering beyond anyone else. As she slapped out with her palm, two long rivers appeared in the void. These two rivers were the true essences of fire and water. They were way more tyrannical than the true essences of fire and water that Lin Fan had comprehended. Comparing them with the true essences of fire and water that Lin Fan had comprehended was just comparing a child to an adult. It wasn't even worth a single mention. When Lin Fan looked at everything up in the void, he felt extremely saddened. No matter what, he was a true and actual powerful being. Back when the infinite worlds had yet to open up, he was a top-tiered powerful being. But now that the infinite worlds had opened up, he was starting to feel that his life had changed. From a top-tiered powerful being, he was now being pushed down by all these fellas who had appeared out of nowhere. The 3,000 demonic gods of the ancient race and all the primogenitors of the thousands of races. Each one of them was one sicker than the other. There was truly no place left for anyone else. If this Fire Water Empress were stronger than he was, so be it. But right now, even this Death Demonic God was more formidable than him. And she was a chick to boot. How savage could this world get? All of a sudden, Lin Fan realized that the law chains that were binding him up were suddenly loosened. Immediately, Lin Fan pulled up his pants and looked left and right. FCK this sh*t. I'm getting out of this place. Lin Fan was no fool. Now that these two fellas were enjoying their fights this much, he definitely had to make his escape. Without bothering about anything more, Lin Fan went into stealth mode instantly and ran off into the distance. They had better not chase up to me. Even though those two chicks are absolutely ravishing, they're extremely perverted as well. If I fall into their hands, I'll definitely suffer a fate worse than death. Lin Fan had already seen through it. The prettier the chick, the stronger they would be. They were definitely not people he could fight against. Naturally, Lin Fan's escape drew the attention of the Fire Water Empress and the Death Demonic God. All of a sudden, both of them bolted out after Lin Fan. Even though Lin Fan had already entered stealth mode, the moment he moved, he would still create signs of activity. While his physical figure could not be seen, he was seen through clear as day by these two powerful beings still. As for this tragic encounter today, Lin Fan would definitely not tell about it to anyone. But, at this moment when he turned his head around and found those two sick, twisted B*TCHES chasing after him, he was naturally so scared that he nearly pissed himself. Holy FCK, I'm not going to be able to escape at all. Lin Fan yelped out in his heart before coming out of stealth. Just what do you guys want? Lin Fan looked at the both of them, breathing heavily as his chest heaved up and down. They were seriously going overboard with the bullying now. Even if his strength wasn't comparable to theirs, they shouldn't bully him as such. Are you guys intent on forcing me to death? Don't get too brazen now. Otherwise, even if yours truly were to commit suicide, I would absolutely not let you guys lay your hands on my flesh at all. Lin Fan hollered out. Ha ha ha, with me, the death demonic god around, even if you're dead, I can just as easily revive you. The death demonic god burst out laughing as her crazed eyes were fixated on Lin Fan. It was as though she wouldn't rest till she got her hands on him. You are the exclusive property of your empress here. Are you trying to betray your empress? The fire water empress scolded out harshly. Come on, girls, don't do this. Everything takes time to settle down. You're not going to win my heart by doing this. Lin Fan said. HMPH, what use do I have for your heart? Your demonic god only requires your body. The death demonic god replied. Even though the fire water empress did not reply, she acknowledged Lin Fan's point in her heart silently. FC King Dog's Tea. Lin Fan cried out in his heart. Couldn't these mother F***CKERS have some principles in them? You're wrong. As long as you can win over the heart of yours truly will be able to unlock more positions. Lin Fan hollered out, but before he could even finish his words, the fire water empress made her move. Follow me. Opening her palm, the fire water empress encompassed the entire world and enveloped Lin Fan within it. She was just purely seizing with brute strength right now, without giving him any chance to fight back at all. Tyrannical. This was truly way too tyrannical. Fire water empress, that is the toy of your demonic god. You have no rights to snatch it from your demonic god. The death god scythe in the hands of the death demonic god started making a sweeping motion, and a ball of death chi rose up and spread out throughout the entire area. This was the source of death that surpassed every single form of power. No one could fight back against this at all. The death source rose up, causing the entire area to feel like an endless abyss of the deathly hells as it reaped in all the living beings in the area. Shing, the realm that the fire water empress had encompassed was suddenly sliced with a tear as a boundless amount of death source started seeping into it. The face of the fire water empress changed. Instantly, she retaliated with thousands of palm strikes, filling the entire world with the true essences of fire and water that rushed out at the death demonic god. Rumble. Without any hesitation, the fire water empress dragged Lin Fan along with her into those endless void. Holy FCK. In the hands of these two powerful beings, Lin Fan was practically just a little chick that could not do anything at all. By the time the world returned to its peaceful state, the death demonic god was the only person standing alone in the void. On that peerlessly beautiful face of hers was a cut, from where a trace of fresh blood that looked like a blazing flame oozed out slowly. The death demonic god used her hands to wipe it, causing the wound to heal up instantly. However, her eyes were burning with an endless rage. All of a sudden, she swung her scythe. The area around her was struck by a bright flash and destroyed, leaving only an empty void behind. Damn it! The voice of the death demonic god was deep as she growled out in an extremely grim tone, which was beyond horrifying. To think that her toy would have been snatched away by that fire water empress. This was something that the death demonic god could not endure at all. Chapter 882. Whoever stops is a dog. Chapter 882. Whoever stops is a dog. Highs. I've escaped from the jaws of the wolf, only to end up in the jaws of the tiger. My life from this point forth is definitely going to be terrible. Lin Fan lamented out in his heart with undulating worries. He did not know where this road would lead to in the future. The death demonic god was truly perverted, and that was something that Lin Fan could not agree more to. But, this fire water empress was not much better either. She could be considered as another type of pervert as well. After a long time, Lin Fan suddenly realized that the scenery around him had changed. Where is this? By now, Lin Fan could be considered as an old acquaintance of the fire water empress, and therefore, he naturally wasn't afraid that she would kill him. But, Even after waiting for a long time, the Fire Water Empress did not reply. When he finally looked over, he realized that the face of the Fire Water Empress was looking extremely terrible. She had a ball of death chi enshrouding her body. The power of this death chi was expending her life force, and was eating at her cultivation state. November LBJNN. Death Demonic God. The eyes of the Fire Water Empress burned with rage. She had reincarnated for countless of eras now. This time around, she had yet to recover her cultivation state fully just yet, and the true essences of fire and water hadn't fused completely either. For her to take a fight with the Death Demonic God right now was just a huge loss for her to undertake. If she did not purge out this death chi that was within her body, something big was definitely going to happen. However, the power of this death chi wasn't one that could be purged away that easily. A single look at the state of the Fire Water Empress was enough for Lin Fan to tell that she was gravely injured. This might perhaps be the best chance for him to make his escape. Lin Fan checked out his surroundings sneakily. He seemed to be within some dimension. Given his current strength, it shouldn't be an issue for him to get out of this dimension. At this moment, Lin Fan secretly tiptoed and walked, wanting to leave this place without a single peep. But right as he was ready to break into a run, a voice had him rooted to the spot. If you dare to run, you will be nothing but a corpse. Even though the Fire Water Empress was enshrouded by the death chi right now, killing Lin Fan was still something that was of no issue for her. No, I'm not running, I'm just checking out the surroundings. How could Lin Fan admit that he was attempting to run away? He naturally had to shake his head and deny immediately. Then, are you all right? Lin Fan checked out the situation of the Fire Water Empress. Things didn't seem too good right now. She had better not die over all of a sudden. He wouldn't know whether he should go try to save her or help stab her to death instead. This was a question that was extremely serious for Lin Fan. He definitely had to think it through hard and long. The Fire Water Empress paid no heed to Lin Fan. Instead, she was immersed in her inner world. When she caught sight of the power of the death chi that was running rampant in her inner world, she could feel that things were definitely going to be sticky. Out of the 3,000 demonic gods of the ancient race, the Death Demonic God belonged to one of the top tiers. This was especially the case for that death source which she wielded, and was especially domineering. Lin Fan pursed his lips. So be it if she wanted to ignore him. Only, what should he do from now on? Given his current strength, he had already reached a bottleneck. Most ordinary powerful beings would not be able to bring him much experience points. There were still a couple more utmost beings of the ancient race. If he could kill them, he might be able to level up. And now that the infinite worlds had opened up, there must definitely have been many changes, and probably a rise in the number of powerful beings. If he could savagely kill a huge bunch of them, that should be pretty decent. And, just as Lin Fan was contemplating about these things, he started to realize that something strange was happening to the atmosphere all of a sudden. A gaze that was filled with penetrative energy was cast over. Based on Lin Fan's many years of experience, this was a gaze that was filled with extreme aggression. When Lin Fan raised his head and searched for that gaze, his heart started thumping furiously. He had an extremely bad feeling. What are you thinking of doing? Lin Fan's little heart started palpitating as he got a little nervous. The Fire Water Empress did not reply and just glared at Lin Fan steadily. Taking a single step forth, she appeared right before Lin Fan's face in an instant. Seems like you're the only one I can depend on at this moment. The Fire Water Empress mumbled to herself. Depend on me for what? I'm useless. And that hand of yours? What is it doing? All of a sudden, Lin Fan realized that the hand of the Fire Water Empress was roaming all around his body freely. This had Lin Fan so scared that he was almost jumping out. Was this mother F***CKER trying to FCK him? Holy FCK. No, don't do this. Let us not get touchy and rowdy here, shall we? We're all civilized people. This is broad daylight, it's not good, let's talk things out. What are you doing? What are you doing? Thud. All of a sudden, the Fire Water Empress had Lin Fan pinned on the ground. The exclusive property of your Empress, it's now time for you to start serving your Empress. Seems like you've cultivated the true essences of fire and water that your Empress has left inside your body pretty decently. The Fire Water Empress spoke up. Holy FCK. At this moment, Lin Fan could only yelp out in his heart. This mother F***CKER was leaving him with no human rights. He wanted to petition for human rights right now. This Fire Water Empress was just forcing herself on him. Bim, bam, boom. Within this dimension, the Fire Water Empress was the god. Everything was within her palm's control. At this moment, Lin Fan was left bare naked, without a single bit of clothing on his body. Just like that, they were facing one another with the bareness of their souls. This was something that had Lin Fan pretty stumped. This mother f***cker was way too casual, wasn't she? They had only just met today, so how could she be doing something like this? And, the thing that had Lin Fan even more flabbergasted was that at this very moment, even the clothes of the Fire Water Empress were all gone. Instantly, the Fire Water Empress placed a finger and dotted it on Lin Fan's forehead. At that moment, an extremely mysterious secret skill appeared in Lin Fan's mind. After he examined it thoroughly, he found out that it was a skill that used the yang to replenish the deficiencies of the yin. I am so bloody FCKED right now. Lin Fan huffed out. This Fire Water Empress was hell-bent on bringing him to his death. No, Lin Fan fought back. He wasn't someone that was so easygoing. And not only that, he was someone with a wife. Wasn't this just mother f***king molestation right here? No, this was even more severe than molestation. HMPH. At this moment, the Fire Water Empress gave a cold snort. It was as though she was displeased over Lin Fan's incooperative attitude. Looking at that marvelous body of the Fire Water Empress, Lin Fan then spread open his arms with nothing to live for any longer. Come on then, play as you wish. Since things have already come down to this, what sh**TUs is resisting going to do? This was already the second time he was going through this situation. All of a sudden, when the Fire Water Empress started moving, two rivers brought Lin Fan and the Fire Water Empress together, intertwining them closer to one another. This was the true essence of fire and water. Right now, the Fire Water Empress was making use of Lin Fan to heal up her injuries, and at the same time, allow the true essences of fire and water to fuse even more thoroughly together. The reason why the Fire Water Empress could even have signs of the true essences of fire and water fusing was all because of Lin Fan. Lin Fan tilted his head and closed his eyes. Tears of grievances after being tainted by someone dripped down from the corners of his eye. This mother f***cker. Ding. Congratulations on obtaining Worldly Pleasure's secret skill, Yin. Ding. Reward for being punished. Obtained Worldly Pleasure's secret skill, Yang. Ding. Learn. At this moment, Lin Fan could feel the true essences of fire and water within his body flowing out into the body of the Fire Water Empress relentlessly. And right when he had lost all hope for life, the system gave off a notification. In Lin Fan's opinion, these secret skills were somewhat heaven-defying. Forget it, let us just harm one another then. Since you're getting some benefits out of this, yours truly can't possibly be getting nothing out of this either. After ascertaining the wonderful effects of the Worldly Pleasure's secret skill, Yang, Lin Fan said nothing anymore. Just do it then. A single FCK in 10 years that results in a FCK that lasts 10 years. Whoever stops first is a dog. Chapter 883, Come at me. Chapter 883, Come at me. Within this dimension, no one could tell what was happening at all. At this moment, Lin Fan kept his expression and closed his eyes firmly. That's because right now, the powers within his body were starting to move. Under the mysterious powers of this secret skill, his paradise, universal elixir, and everything else started to expand. N-O-V-E in .c ohm. Even though the true essences of fire and water that he had fully cultivated were now all snatched over by the Fire Water Empress, Lin Fan did not put it at heart at all. That was because he could feel his strength rising continuously. Ding. Experience points plus 10,000. Ding. Experience points plus 10,000. When he heard the notifications from the system, Lin Fan was startled as well. His experience points were rising continuously without him killing any powerful beings. This was something that was incredible in his mind. Seemed like this was the mystical effect of this secret skill now. The Fire Water Empress was a powerful being who had reincarnated over countless of eras. Since she was acquainted with the death demonic god, she must have naturally come from the same time period as her. But, it was probably because of her destiny's lifespan that she had to go through a reincarnation each time she reached a predetermined stage. However, before the Fire Water Empress could even fully regain her powers, she was suppressed by the heavens will of the ancient saint world, and was locked in that sealed ground. Within there, she regained her cultivation state continuously, and now that everything was complete, she broke through the seal. And, the reason why the Fire Water Empress was able to regain her powers this quickly had something to do with Lin Fan as well. Within the system, there was a fusion function. When the Fire Water Empress engaged in such an act with Lin Fan for the first time, the true essences of fire and water within her body started changing under the effects of the fusion function. That was also the trigger for the first step of the Fire-Water Empress's rise. This time around, while the Fire-Water Empress was purging out the death chi within her body, she was also collecting back the true essences of fire and water from within Lin Fan's body. The true essences of fire and water that were kept within Lin Fan's body had fully fused by now. This was something that was extremely important for the Fire-Water Empress. However, for Lin Fan, none of that mattered. The true essences of fire and water were not things that he wanted in the first place. And at the same time, his paradise and universal elixir had already been through the influence of the true essences of fire and water. Therefore, he did not require them any longer. Even if they were taken away by the Fire-Water Empress right now, it would affect nothing. Right now, Lin Fan's main motive was just to make use of this opportunity to see just how many experience points he could gain out of it. Perhaps breaking out of a divine celestial level 10 cultivation state might not be something difficult as well. Lin Fan just laid there quietly without moving, and allowed the Fire-Water Empress to display her true skills. For him, this was pretty convenient as well. If he were to get nothing out of this and had to just lie there to be FCKED by someone else, Lin Fan would definitely feel indignant. But things were good right now. The skyrocketing experience points had his heart palpitating quickly. What sort of a state was after Divine Celestial Level 10, Eternal God state? This was something that wasn't inscribed in any records within the ancient saint world. But, since the Fire-Water Empress and the others could be so strong, they must have naturally reached an extremely profound state then. Ding! Experience points plus 10,000. Looking at the climbing experience points, Lin Fan couldn't feel any happier. He had long cast the pains of this unfair treatment he was receiving to the back of his head, and was wishing that this entire ordeal could last longer right now. At this moment, the Fire-Water Empress was equally happy in her heart. There were already signs of the death chi within her body being purged. At the same time, the true essences of fire and water within her were beginning to fuse. However, there was something that startled the Fire-Water Empress. To think that the true essences of fire and water that she had left within this man in the past would have been fused up completely by him. This was something absolutely incredible in her mind. She had reincarnated through countless eras, and had horizons that were extremely broad. But, even if it was her, she would require an endless amount of hard work to fuse the true essences of fire and water together. To think that everything would be laid out perfectly right now with such ease. The Fire-Water Empress realized that her exclusive property was making use of her to cultivate himself as well. However, for the Fire-Water Empress, none of that mattered. Since he was her exclusive property, there was no harm in letting him get some benefits from this. While the Fire-Water Empress was initially indifferent towards worldly pleasures as such, it could not be denied that she too felt somewhat infuriated the first time this had happened. But, she thought through things properly later on. She was the Fire-Water Empress. It was only natural for her to have an exclusive property. As far as the Fire-Water Empress was considered right now, Lin Fan was already part of her personal possessions. No one could wish to lay their hands on him. The days and nights exchanged places. God knew how much time had passed within this separate dimension. It was silent without any exchange in conversation, except for a single sound that permeated out relentlessly. Piok, 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 ding, congratulations on leveling up. Ding, cultivation state leveled up, broken through from the Divine Celestial Level 10, Eternal God state cultivation state. Automatically creating the Supreme Throne to complete the Supreme State. All of a sudden, Lin Fan felt an enormous change happening within his body. His universal elixir had exploded out, causing an endless amount of spirit chi and countless martial arts skills to float out within his inner world. All of a sudden, a formidable amount of power was emanated out before converging into a single Supreme Throne. This wasn't the Eternal God seat. This was the Supreme Throne that was even stronger than the Eternal God seat. When Lin Fan recalled the aura of the Eternal God seat and compared it to this, he found that there was practically a world of a difference. There was no way to compare the two at all. Seemed like it was as he had thought. The Fire-Water Empress must have cultivated out a Supreme Throne for herself. Completely breaking through the barriers of the Divine Celestial Level 10, Eternal God state must have allowed her to create this Supreme Throne. At the same time, there was a series of immense changes in his paradise. The spirit chi within his paradise started to expand and spread out immensely. The mythical parasol tree was undergoing a second evolution at this point. Its tree branches were spreading out, with green leaves sprouting out flourishingly. These dense tree branches extended out into all directions and seeped into the endless void. Boom! The spirit chi gushed out. The mythical parasol tree was uprooted from the ground and covered the sky of Lin Fan's paradise entirely. Those sparkling Shenyang pills started pouring down endlessly from above just like raindrops. Cultivation state. Supreme state. Ding. This is the appearance of the first ever supreme being in the history of the human race. Ding. Obtained human race supreme set. Ding. Reward of supreme skill. When he heard the notification from the system, Lin Fan almost leapt up in joy. How mother f*** king great was this? The system is generous indeed. But, even at this moment, the experience points are still rising up continuously. I've got to carry on with this pace then. All this stuff about rewards and whatnot can wait till this is all over for me to check it out properly. Right now, Lin Fan was almost flying up to the heavens. The system was really too darned good. Ding. Experience points plus 5,000. Even though the experience points he was gaining now weren't all that much, Lin Fan would still take it in as much as it was worth. All of a sudden, the fire-water empress came to a stop. The death chi within her body had been purged out completely, and the true essences of fire and water within her were fully fused as well. When she next opened up her eyes, that was a sharp glint that burst forth from her gaze. The long hair that was flowing down her back started rising up. Your empress has finally recovered. Right now, the fire-water empress could feel that her powers had reached a peak. My exclusive property, you have made your empress really pleased. Your duty is now complete. The fire-water empress beamed out widely as though she was about to stop. But at this moment, how could Lin Fan allow her to stop? AFCK in 10 years for AFCK that lasts 10 years. Whoever stops first is a dog. If you wish to stop, you can stop now then. Lin Fan turned his head in a toss, leaving nothing but this sentence behind. The fire-water empress was frozen as though she had not heard it clearly. But all of a sudden, the fire-water empress was riled completely. Exclusive property. Since you wish to play like that, your empress shall grant your wish. HMPH, come at me. Lin Fan rolled his eyes, indicating that he was extremely calm and didn't fear her at all. Chapter 884. I admit defeat. Chapter 884. I admit defeat. As long as one had the skills, they could grind an iron rod into a needle. However, Lin Fan wasn't worried about this. Wasn't it just a needle? And even if it did become a needle, all he had to do was just chop it off and regrow a new one. This was a steady plan for sure. An endless abyss with tactful and penetrative turns. For a moment or so, this was simply a mysterious feeling to behold. The body of the fire-water empress truly left one with no complaints. It was exquisite and fine, with protrusions at all the right places. She was neither fat nor skinny, forming perfect curves on her body. And right now, she could even be described as a wild horse that was just unleashed into the wild, galloping with unbridled joy over the grass plains. Ding. Experience points plus 5,000. The notifications of the system had Lin Fan almost flying into the heavens. This was too damned pleasurable. This was the true way of leveling. Compared to even killing monsters to level up, this was way faster. Right now, Lin Fan's cultivation state was already at the supreme state, and he had truly transcended from the divine celestial level 10, eternal God state. Initially, Lin Fan had thought that he would have to put in a lot more effort to get through this state. But, who would have thought that he could actually get at it this easily? This speed was simply way too unreal. Right now, the amount of experience points he required could be compared to a vast ocean. However, Lin Fan wasn't afraid of it in the least bit. As long as he had the perseverance, he would definitely be able to make up for those experience points. In this period of time, Lin Fan had already cultivated that secret skill to an extremely high state. Each time it activated, it was the exchange of powers between him and the fire-water empress, causing his experience points to rise because of it as well. However, there was something that bugged Lin Fan's mind. 10 years seemed a little too long, didn't it? And how much time had passed earlier on? Lin Fan truly did not keep a track. But, for him to be able to raise his cultivation state from a divine celestial level 10, eternal God state to the supreme state, it must have been quite some time. Thump, thump. Right now, Lin Fan's mind was completely fixated on his cultivation. As for this most wonderful activity in the world that was going on right now, he did not pay much attention to it. However, the sensations were still ever too real. Lin Fan could only think of a saying right now: there is no field that is plowed to death, only the cows that are worked to death. However, that saying wouldn't work out all the time as well. If the fields ran out of water, it would also dry up. Although given the current situation, it was pretty unlikely for that to happen. This was practically a flooding dam right now. She was so wet that she couldn't possibly get any wetter. Day and night passed by one another. In this separate dimension, there was no concept of time at all. 1 year later, Lin Fan could feel that his entire body was almost sucked dry. He could barely endure it any longer. But on the other hand, he realized that the Fire Water Empress was only getting more energetic over time. Even the true essences of fire and water that had fused together were getting stronger and stronger, as though there was no limit to it. Given the current situation, Lin Fan was not the only one raising his cultivation state. The Fire Water Empress was doing the same as well. This was a win-win situation. 2 years later, Lin Fan could feel that he had turned skinner by a whole lot, as though he had been sucked dry. This repetitive cycle day after day was never ending. Even gods would bloody get tired over this. Fire Water Empress, how about this? At this moment, Lin Fan opened his eyes. He wanted to suggest for them to just let it go. How about that? Towards the fighting prowess of the Fire Water Empress, Lin Fan was truly convinced by now. This Mother CKER was just like a perpetual motion machine that did not require rest at all. However, a single sentence of reply from the Fire Water Empress had Lin Fan completely riled. Whoever stops is a dog. You said that, didn't you? And, you want to stop now? Even after 2 years of riding, the Fire Water Empress's face did not change at all, and was ever so domineering. For the Fire Water Empress, the mockery from her exclusive property was something that she couldn't possibly endure. If she didn't suppress him entirely right now, how was she going to uphold her might in the future? Lin Fan's heart was burning with a ball of raging flame. It had already been such a long time now. To think that she would still remember that single sentence, whoever stops is a dog. But, how could he possibly admit that he was a dog? Even if he couldn't hold on anymore, he had to persevere. Who's afraid of whom? Continue then. Lin Fan wanted to flip around and take the lead to show her who was the boss. But, when he placed his hands on the slender waist of the Fire Water Empress, he was immediately hid away by the Fire Water Empress. You are the exclusive property of your Empress. Could it be that you're thinking of pinning your Empress under? You had better just lie down right there. The Fire Water Empress scolded out. Lie your mother. Lin Fan was practically close to breaking down right now. How could this Mother CKER be so tyrannical? The both of them were improving mutually. Why couldn't they just change a position? But, under this absolutely formidable suppression, Lin Fan couldn't fight back at all, and could only lie down there silently. 3 years later, Lin Fan's cultivation state was getting more and more superb right now. He was already more than halfway through the experience points required to break through the supreme state. It might not be long before he could break through it fully now. However, something that Lin Fan did not want to talk more about was the fact that he was already numb right now. There wasn't a single shred of feeling left. Even though his godly body was well accomplished by now, he could not endure such a savage attack still. In Lin Fan's eyes, this Fire Water Empress was no living being at all. This Mother CKER must be a robot. If this were to continue on, someone was going to lose their life. As the supreme being of the human race right now, with a cultivation state of a supreme state, his death might not come at the hands of an enemy, but instead by being FCKED to death. For the Fire Water Empress, this was quite the decent feeling. To think that she could continue to progress even after the true essences of fire and water were fused together. It seems like it's been a couple of years now. The outside world might have already fallen into a state of complete chaos by now. Lin Fan said from the side of his face. He was hoping that the Fire Water Empress would let him off because of this. It was really time to stop playing now. It was way too much for him to handle now. Exclusive property, it's all too late now. You have already let your Empress here hit the sweet spot. The snow-white and smooth skin of the Fire Water Empress was dripping with beads of sweat. This was so damn seductive to look at. However, even if that were the case, she was nothing but an old sow in front of Lin Fan's eyes right now. He truly wanted to cry. 4 years later, Lin Fan was totally dumbfounded by now. He truly did not wish to move anymore. The experience points were still rising up like crazy. However, for some reason, Lin Fan just couldn't feel any bit of joy at all right now. Compared to the experience points, he was more willing to be able to get a rest right now. At this moment, Lin Fan just laid there with a face of absolute despair. He raised his right hand gently and placed it on his forehead. I truly can't take this anymore. Lin Fan realized that he had always overestimated himself. Bloody hell, 10 years, he was almost breaking down by the end of the 2nd year. The hands of the Fire Water Empress were pressing down on Lin Fan's chest. Her long hair were spilled down from her head, and tender drops of sweat rolled down those glistening, shiny hair of hers. However, for the Fire Water Empress, this was not enough. Everything was still far from enough. N-O-V-E in .c ohm. Lin Fan looked at the Fire Water Empress. And when she looked at him, she gave him a smile instead. Perhaps this was how feelings grew over time. Lin Fan realized that the Fire Water Empress was much gentler to him than before. But even then, she did not show any indication of wanting to stop at all. No, no more. I've got to save myself. If this were to carry on, the only path awaiting me is surely death. Lin Fan screamed out in his mind. He then gently raised his hands and stroked the long hair of the Fire Water Empress. All of a sudden, the 9-5 legendary brick appeared in his hands. Piok, thud, the Fire Water Empress fainted over instantly. Immediately, Lin Fan pushed the Fire Water Empress over. When he checked out that little brother of his, he truly wanted to cry. It's totally numb now, there's no more feeling to it. Seems like it's truly crippled right now. Lin Fan cried out in his heart. Without giving a care for anything else in this world, he wore his pants and made a run for it instantly. As for the Fire Water Empress with that perfectly crafted body, Lin Fan didn't even want to take a look at it ever again. Chapter 885. Who is this blind FCK? Chapter 885. Who is this blind FCK? 1 minute later, the Fire Water Empress frowned before standing up. Her body flashed with a bright light, and she was draped with clothing instantly. What's going on? The Fire Water Empress was confused, not knowing what had just happened. Earlier on, it was as though she had lost all her consciousness and senses. Where has the exclusive property of your Empress gone? The Fire Water Empress searched all around. All of a sudden, she flared up, damned exclusive property. How dare you run away behind the back of your Empress? The Fire Water Empress started walking forth a little. All of a sudden, she realized something a little uncomfortable about her body. This was especially the case for that throbbing pain that was coming forth from between her legs. However, the Fire Water Empress did not put this to heart at all. Flicking out with her finger, the entire dimension dispersed. The Fire Water Empress then stood up in the void and looked out at the world. Even though the Fire Water Empress was just standing silently like that, she had already long cast out her consciousness into the world, trying to seek out for signs of Lin Fan. However, when her search rained in no results, the Fire Water Empress frowned. To think that he would have disappeared just like that. There was a pair of eyes with a sneaky gaze that were peeking up at the situation ahead. And the owner of these sneaky eyes was none other than Lin Fan. Holy FCK, luckily, yours truly was smart and knew that I should just enter stealth mode, since I have no way of running away. After that, this mud that I used to cover myself with would do well to hide the scent of my body. Lin Fan was really pleased with his intelligence. This was a trick that he could repeat countless of times. As long as he was being hunted down by others, he could just run this same ploy and practically ensure a perfectly safe escape. But, now wasn't the time to run off just yet. It wasn't as though he was on equal paring with the Fire Water Empress. It was hard to say that she wouldn't just do a turnabout and return for him. It'd be best for him to hide it out a little while more. Lin Fan laid there quietly and motionlessly. No matter how dirty the mud around his body was, he just refused to move at all. Indeed, it wasn't long before a figure appeared in the void. And by the sounds of it, it was evidently the Fire Water Empress. HMPH, damned exclusive property, if your Empress were to catch hold of you, I'd be sure to break off all 3 of your legs. This domineering voice boomed out across the entire sky. When Lin Fan heard this voice, he could not help but suck in a breath of cold air as well. What an overbearing woman. At the same time, he swore to the heavens that no matter what happened in the future, he must definitely not get captured by her. He must raise his cultivation state. Only then would he have the foundation to fight it out with her, so that he could pin her down harshly and show her who was the true daddy. Hue, do you think that yours truly wouldn't know of your sneaky plans? Even if a single strand of hair from your body twitches, yours truly can see right through you. It's not as though you can play dirty with me. Lin Fan was confident right now and did not move at all, just letting the Fire Water Empress act all she wanted instead. Even now that the Fire Water Empress had left by this moment, Lin Fan still did not budge an inch. That was because in his opinion, the Fire Water Empress was still a really devious person. And indeed, just as Lin Fan expected, the Fire Water Empress appeared a few more times continuously, as though she was waiting for Lin Fan to fall back into her trap himself. Seeing a situation as such, Lin Fan was just totally speechless. He just laid down there and closed his eyes. It was truly a torture after being FCKED for a couple of years. It had been a long time since he had had a good rest, and he truly just wanted to rest right now. This was a sleep that Lin Fan wanted to slowly enjoy and savor. The battle between the Fire Water Empress and Lin Fan had gone over a good 5 years now. Within these 5 years, the changes within the ancient saint world had been huge. With the resurrection of one powerful being after another, the thousands of races who had been oppressed in the past were now finally able to stand up for themselves. That was because they now had the utmost powerful beings to look up to in their hearts. As for the ancient race, while their position was largely similar to the past, they could no longer be as tyrannical as they once were. The 3,000 demonic gods of the ancient race had been waking up one after another in the past 5 years as well. N-O-V-E-L-B-I-N.C-O-M. This was going to be an apocalyptic battle. As for the primogenitors of the thousands of races, each time one of them awakened, a sect would form with their appearance. These sects would pull all the beings of the same race within as their disciples. This time around, the glorious age of the thousands of races had finally descended. However, there were still sinister plots going underway. 2 years ago, the god of the wings race, Lucifer, had sunken down and colluded with the ancient race. And in the most recent year, there was even an earth-shattering battle that took place. The king of the giant race, Kua Fu, had gone for a round with the death demonic god. This was a battle that caused the entire heavens to topple over and the stars to shatter. There were countless of casualties. However, as for the other utmost powerful beings of any races, they were all just waiting as though they were anticipating something. Traitor, hand over that big treasure of the Buddha race. At this moment, a few streaks of light bolted over from the void. The leading streak of light was exceptionally hurried, as though he was being chased close to death right now. This is mine, it does not belong to the Buddha race. A monk was yelling out. However, 2 gigantic basketballs were hanging from the chest of that monk. Bobbing up and down, they were really eye-catching. If Lin Fan had seen this, he would have definitely been shocked. Wasn't this bloody Reverend Shakia? Reverend Shakia was a genius of the Buddha race. How was he being hunted down by his own kind right now? HMPH. Just capture this being with the demonic body right there and hand him over for the Rulai Buddha to handle. Heaven-encompassing Buddha palm. All of a sudden, the entire void rippled out as a gigantic golden Buddha palm descended from the skies, aiming to capture Reverend Shakia within. When Reverend Shakia caught sight of this, he was so scared that his little heart started thumping. Holy FCK, you guys are coming at it for real. Reverend Shakia felt that the world had changed greatly in the past few years. The moment the guarded grounds were shattered, he was all ready to head back to the Buddha race and join them. But who would have thought that after he returned to the Buddha race, he would realize that there was something somewhat different about them now. The Buddha king that was totally unparalleled in his eyes suddenly looked as though he had been given a bad beating. After inquiring a little, Reverend Shakia discovered that all of them had been suppressed down by a powerful being. It was only then that Reverend Shakia found out about an extremely powerful being having arrived. And not only that, the powerful being claimed that the entire Buddha race was created by him. This was one hell of a fantasy tale in the mind of Reverend Shakia. But, when he thought about how his cultivation state was barely enough for the other party to even fill the gaps of his teeth, he could only remain alive with a low profile. But, who would have guessed that the secret of him possessing the great Buddha's light of purification would be made known to this Rulai Buddha or whatnot, and the other party would request for him to hand it over. This was something that Reverend Shakia couldn't accept naturally. What was with this with giving up his own possession just because the other party wanted it? It was not as though they were that chummy with one another now, were they? Therefore, Reverend Shakia broke into an escape immediately. This single escape of his lasted for an entire year up till now. Within this single year, Reverend Shakia had been ambushed countless of times, and he would barely scrape out alive each time. However, this time around, Reverend Shakia could feel that something was not right. The people hunting him down this time around were all powerful beings. Compared to him, they were much, much stronger. Lay down and surrender. The Buddha palm that was descending from the skies was getting larger by the second, as though it could cover the entire sky. Reverend Shakia had nowhere to run entirely. He then held out before using both his arms to hold up the heavens. You guys are too much. At this moment, Reverend Shakia just went into SEED mode immediately as an immense amount of power surged out from him, wanting to push the Buddha palm away. But, the powers that were coming at him were simply way too strong. Reverend Shakia could only feel a tremendous force that was pressing down on his body. Boom, boom, Reverend Shakia was being pushed down from the void by this crushing power. His feet were being pushed into the ground right now. I'm F***seeked, Reverend Shakia screamed, feeling that this was the end of the road for him. Holy FCK, who is this blind FCK who is stepping on the body of yours truly? Are you looking to die? Just at this moment, a loud voice boomed out. Right now, Lin Fan was blowing up. Wasn't he just taking a good sleep, and that was all? Why would a blind FCK start stamping deep into the mud? Did they not grow any eyes when they were born or what? Chapter 886, Extremely Tough Life. Chapter 886, Extremely Tough Life. At this moment, Reverend Shakia was extremely jumpy. Therefore, he was entirely nerve-wrecked by this voice that came all of a sudden. Feeling as though something was about to come out from beneath his feet, he did not even have to think twice before stamping down hard once more. Oh, holy FCK, yet another stamp. Just as Lin Fan was about to get up, the guy who was standing above him suddenly stamped down once more, causing him to blow his top entirely. Who the FCK did he piss off? All he did was hide within a hole under the ground and fall asleep because he was a little tired, didn't he? Did he have to deserve such treatment? Lin Fan did not think anymore as he pushed the feet that were above him apart and stood up furiously. Reverend Shakia was almost scared out of his wits right now. This was especially when he caught sight of the mud man before him, as he was even more astounded. It's you. Just as Lin Fan was prepared to send this guy who had stepped on him flying, he was taken aback. Wasn't this the bloody bald monk? And by the looks of it, things didn't look too good for the bald monk right now. Was he being hunted down by someone or something? Boom, boom. At this moment, the Buddha palm was still pushing down from the heavens, as though it could crush the bald monk at any moment. Lin Fan did not say anything much as he shook his head helplessly. Seemed like this bald monk hasn't been doing all that well recently. Lin Fan stood up straight and thrust a single fist upward, looking extremely imposing with his stance. It might look simple, but it was extremely violent. That single fist was enough to cover the entire sky, as it caused the mighty-looking Buddha palm to disperse away before turning into countless spots of Buddha light that disappeared within the world. When Reverend Shakia caught sight of this, he was completely stumped. So damn bloody tyrannical. These few beings of the Buddha race who had been chasing him down were extremely strong. Along the entire chase, he could do nothing other than dodge and run. He couldn't even fight back at all. But, the fact that this mud man before him right now was so damn overbearing had Reverend Shakia freezing up at his spot in shock. No velp in .c ohm. Fellow brother, thank you for your great help in blocking the blow. You will definitely receive good karma for this in the future. After Reverend Shakia snapped out of that short stupor, he knew that he shouldn't linger any further at this place and proceeded to continue escaping. And just as Reverend Shakia was about to scoot off, Lin Fan spoke up. Bald monk, what now? Do you bloody hell not even recognize me anymore? Do you want to die right now? Benefactor, I'm not a bald. Hearing others calling him bald monk, Reverend Shakia would still get very annoyed. But, when he was about to correct the other party, he froze up for a moment. That was because he had realized that this voice and the way the other party was addressing him was really familiar. Why you? Reverend Shakia glared at this mud man before him and was startled there. Lin Fan smiled calmly before checking out how he looked right now. Raising his palm, he used the connate element of water to wash his entire body, cleaning away all the mud before he revealed his true face. Benefactor, it's you. I've finally found you. At this moment, Reverend Shakia yelped out in joy as though he had just found some godly riches. Benefactor, save me, I'm being hunted down by these guys. But then, he hid behind Lin Fan immediately. How are you doing so badly right now? Lin Fan looked up at the few figures in the void. Aren't these just a couple of eternal god state beings who have not obtained an eternal god seat? To think that they're able to push you to such an extent. What an embarrassment. Amitabha, benefactor here, this person is a sinner of the Buddha race. Please hand him over to us. At this moment, a figure who was emitting a Buddha light all over his body spoke up with a gentle voice. He was holding up a single palm before his chest and carried a big clock with him. Bullcrap, I'm not a sinner. It's you B***stards who want to steal my great Buddha's light of purification. After being chased for so long, even Reverend Shakia had begun to bore some resentment. These guys were just a bunch of degenerates. The moment they chased him, they wanted his life. There was no time for him to cut a rest at all. HMPH. A fat Buddha that was at the side snorted out coldly. His angry face alone would be enough to scare off weaker beings. Reverend Shakia hid behind Lin Fan's back once more, benefactor, this bunch of fellas are particularly cruel. They don't even behave like beings of the Buddha race at all. Whoever they meet, they kill. Anyone who doesn't believe in them are killed instantly. The Buddha race right now has changed significantly. Lin Fan wasn't bothered in the least bit about this bunch of fellas. At the same time, he did not want to have too much of an interaction with them. This bald monk is a man of yours truly. If you guys know what's good for you, you had better scram. Otherwise, don't blame me for being merciless in my strikes if you still wish to be brazen. Lin Fan replied. Amitabha, benefactor, we will not leave until we bring this sinner back with us. HMPH. Condoning the sinner makes you a sinner as well. Take him down and we shall decide on his punishment after we return. The Buddha with an angry face by the side barked out. I gave you guys face, but you refused to take it. How dare you try to lay your hands on my men? Get the hell lost. Lin Fan instantly threw out a single punch. Suddenly, something startling happened. That fist looked as though it could tear through the firmaments as it streaked out at the Buddhas. Boom, it's over. Bam, one by one, the Buddhas let out astonished looks. Their bodies then started exploding apart as though they had just met with an unblockable force. Ding, congratulations on killing beings of the Buddha race. Ding, Infinite World's Great War initiated. Impressions function initiated. Buddha race's impression points dropped. Buddha race, hatred. Lin Fan was stunned, to think that there would be such a function. But none of it matters now. Since this was the Infinite World's Great War, then he would represent the human race then. As long as we meet with anyone who is indignant, FCK them all to death. Holy FCK, benefactor, you're too strong now, aren't you? To think that you would have turned this formidable after just a few years of not seeing you. Reverend Shakia exclaimed out in disbelief. And what's wrong with you? How are you living life so badly right now? To think that after a couple of years of not seeing you, you're just a divine celestial level 9 state, that's all. Was your innate potential eaten up by dogs or what? Lin Fan remarked. It's not that, benefactor. I have been hunted down day and night for a few years now. How could I have the chance to even cultivate in peace? How could Reverend Shakia allowed Lin Fan to ridicule him as such? No matter what, he was a genius of the Buddha race. But, by the looks of the situation right now, he could no longer return to the Buddha race. He had already become a sinner of the Buddha race. Bloody hell, they were way too cruel. All he did was to withhold the skill from them, wasn't it? Did they have to chase him down so relentlessly? This is truly FC King Shish Tty doggish. What about the guarded ground? Lin Fan asked. It's gone. What about our revolutionary army? Lin Fan asked again. Ah, benefactor, our revolutionary army has long disbanded. Those members of ours were really way too spineless. The moment they heard that there were utmost powerful beings from their own races blessing and protecting them, all of them ran off one faster than the other to head back to side with these utmost powerful beings who had spouted out of nowhere. The moment he got to this, Reverend Shakia's heart was filled with pain. That was a beautiful, sunny and bright day. But, those members who had just escaped with Reverend Shakia came before his face one after another. Vice Party Leader, I'm sorry. There's an utmost powerful being from my race who has emerged now. I'm going to head back now. Did they have any conscience left at all? None. Their consciences had all flown into the heavens. What the FCK am I still doing here with the Revolutionary Army? I've got an utmost powerful being with my race now. Time to go back and hug his legs. ... Eventually, all of the members escaped, and Reverend Shakia became the leader of no members. Hence, he could only return to the Buddha race. But, who would have thought that after he returned to the Buddha race, he would meet with something outrageous as such? Tough. This was an absolutely tough life he was leading. Chapter 887. This situation doesn't seem right. Chapter 887. This situation doesn't seem right. After hearing the words of the bald monk, Lin Fan went silent. He hadn't expected so many things to have happened. Benefactor, where have you been to for the past 5 years? Reverend Shakia asked. For a moment or so, Lin Fan truly did not know how to answer him. It was not as though he could say that he was FCKED by a chick for a full 5 years, could he? I've been cultivating in seclusion. Eventually, he could only think up of this better sounding excuse. I see, so that's the case. As this poor monk was saying, after not seeing you for just a few years, your strength has really gotten much stronger, benefactor. Now I know it's because you've been cultivating in seclusion. Reverend Shakia lamented out. No wonder he had heard no news of benefactor Lin for the past few years. At this moment, Lin Fan released Chicky from his paradise. Kukkaku. The moment Chicky came out, he raised his head and cried out loudly. When Reverend Shakia caught sight of Chicky, his face lit up. Benefactor. Your timing couldn't have been more perfect. This poor monk is almost starving to death now. To think that you would have a chicken ready to be barbecued. When Chicky, who was still stretching his body while enjoying the fresh air outside, heard these words, he blared up. He then tossed his head around furiously and glared at Reverend Shakia fixatedly with those chicken eyes of his. Bald monk, who did you say you want to barbecue? Chicky was enraged right now. To think that this bald monk would talk about barbecuing him. God damn it. This chicken can speak. When Reverend Shakia saw a chicken that could speak out, he jumped in fright. It was truly a rare sight for a talking chicken to appear. Alright, stop making so much noise now. This is Chicky, this is Bald Monk, you guys go get to know one another. Lin Fan said. Oh, so, it's Brother Chicky. It's an honor to meet you at last. Reverend Shakia stretched out his hands, implying that they should make up by shaking hands. But for Chicky, this wasn't a matter that could blow off this easily. He then leapt up and hopped onto the bald head of Reverend Shakia. Brother Chicky, you're quite lively. Reverend Shakia chuckled out. Lin Fan looked at how friendly Chicky was to Reverend Shakia, and felt bewildered in his heart. Did this bloody chicken have a change in personality? But all of a sudden, Reverend Shakia yelped out, why does my head feel steaming hot? Holy FCK, Brother Chicky, you pooped. The moment Lin Fan heard these words, he flung his head around and discovered that Chicky had just taken a huge dump on the head of the bald monk. It was still steaming hot and spouting white smoke. Kukkaku, Chicky cried out exuberantly before hopping back onto Lin Fan's shoulders. He then kept back his wings and placed them on his waist akimbo. Remember to watch your words in the future, bald monk. Gosh, how old are you already, and yet you still speak like a child. You can't even be compared to your Chicky here. Reverend Shakia, Lin Fan, ... Right now at the Buddha race. The Buddha race of today was much different from the past. The whole place was filled with Buddhist sounds, and it was no longer quiet like before. Western Pure Land of Ultimate Bliss. A bunch of Buddhas and Buddha lords sat there cross-legged. They looked at the utmost powerful being who was sitting on the elevated platform before them with a gaze of reverence. Within this pure land of ultimate bliss, Buddhist doctrines were turned into a series of long golden dragons that coiled up within the void. This was the ancestral Buddha imparting Buddhist doctrines down. All of those Lama Buddhas were listening to it with an intoxicated look on their faces. However, the Buddha lords were all really dispirited. They were all once the powerful beings of the Buddha race who controlled over the entire race. But ever since this mysterious ancestral Buddha appeared, everything had bloody changed. Right now, they were third-rated Buddha race beings. How in the bloody world could they endure this? This was especially the case for the seating arrangement. They were now seated according to ranking, and these Buddha lords were now all ostracized out into the outer circles. As for those Lama Buddhas and World Buddhas that were ahead right now, no one knew where they spouted out from. It was as though they had appeared out of thin air. And the most unendurable thing for these Buddha lords were that these guys were even more formidable than they were in terms of strength. Was there even justice in the world anymore? Since when had powerful beings turned this worthless? For all of these Buddha lords, it was truly as though the world had FCKED them over like dogs. Creak. All of a sudden, some of the empty Buddha seats exploded out, causing all the Buddha beings around them to jump in fright. The ancestral Buddha, who was seated on the royal throne, jerked his eyes open. His boundless voice traveled out across the void. Golden Clock World Buddha, Angry Eyes Lama Buddha, killed by evil demons and have returned to the Western Pure Land of Ultimate Bliss. Amitabha, November LBJNN. When the masses of the Buddha race heard this, they chanted the scriptures and regained their peaceful faces. The faces of the Buddha lords were all startled by this scene. To think that these guys could remain so calm after someone was killed. Did they have to be so composed? These Buddha lords garnered that these fellas must have gone to chase after that lad, Reverend Shakia. But now that the Buddha seats had exploded, it seemed like the lad must have made it out of his plight. Good job. Indeed, he was not the pride of the Buddha race for nothing, to be able to FCK those old fogies over. Not only had all of these Buddha lords suffered tons of hardship, they were being looked down upon with contemptuous eyes by these fellas as well. Now that the pride of the Buddha race could kill those old fogies, it was as good as a vent of frustration for them. Seems like I have to make a personal trip this time around. The ancestral Buddha's body was covered by a golden layer of protection, with a series of Buddha dragons coiled around him. He then looked over at the endless void and moved his true body. May our Buddha be escorted. The masses of the Buddha race chanted out in pride. When the Buddha lords caught sight of this scene before them, they panicked instantly. This mother f***cker was going over with his true body. Could that lad Shakya hold out against this? At this moment, Reverend Shakya was glaring at Chicky with furious eyes. On the other hand, Chicky glared back at him with equal ferocity, showing no signs of weakness. It was as though the both of them could have a fight breaking out between them at any moment. Hold on, someone's coming. Right at that moment, something happened to the void. Initially, the skies were clear and cloudless for thousands of miles. But all of a sudden, a storm of clouds covered the entire sky. From within them, a series of golden Buddha light beams seeped out. Amitabha, a boundless voice boomed out from within the clouds. As though the clouds were sliced apart by someone, they separated left and right, revealing a golden Buddha in the middle. It's him, it's him. When Reverend Shakya caught sight of who it was, he exclaimed out in shock. For Reverend Shakya, this guy was incomparably horrifying. Shakyamuni, as a sinner of the Buddha race, who do you insist on resisting so bitterly? Come back with me to the Western Pure Land. The mighty voice of the ancestral Buddha rattled the entire world, causing the entire place to seem as though it was a world of Buddhas. With that, Buddha dragons danced all around, displaying a dignified might. FCK your mother's sh*t. I'll go back with your mother to the Western Pure Land. Reverend Shakya howled out. Now that his old bro was here, it was not as though he needed to be afraid of this sh*t. At this moment, Lin Fan looked at Reverend Shakya in bewilderment. Bald monk, your name is Shakyamuni. That's right, that's my full name. But, this poor monk still wishes for benefactor to start calling me Reverend Shakya. Reverend Shakya replied. Holy FCK, Lin Fan was feeling a little weird in his heart. But at this moment, the ancestral Buddha in the void did not seem like someone that was simple to deal with at all. This benefactor here, you seem to have an affinity with your Buddha here. You can join our Buddha race. The ancestral Buddha looked at Lin Fan and said calmly. Join your mother. Lin Fan hadn't expected for this newly arrived bald monk to want to rope him into the Buddha race. This guy was trying to dig a pit for him to jump right in. HMPH. All of a sudden, the ancestral Buddha was enraged, and a boundless palm descended down from the void. Benefactor, repent and you shall be saved. Benefactor, I leave this to you. When Reverend Shakya caught sight of everything before him, he yelped out before jumping to the back. A battle of this level wasn't something he could interfere in at all. He could only let Lin Fan display his might to his heart's will. But for Lin Fan, this new bald monk here seemed a little formidable. Chapter 888. Who's afraid of whom? Chapter 888. Who's afraid of whom? N-O-V-E in .c Om. With a stern expression on his face and his heaven-encompassing palm, that sparkling golden Buddha palm descended down the sky just like the five-fingered mountain that was used to suppress the monkey. Damn all of you bald monks. Do you guys only know how to use palm techniques? Lin Fan's powers rumbled as he slammed out with a single fist. When the fist collided with the palm strike, a reverberating sound boomed out. So strong. With just a preliminary exchange of blows, Lin Fan was already able to get a rough understanding of the other party's strength. The strength of this ancestral Buddha was definitely beyond the supreme state. Just that palm alone was enough for Lin Fan to tell that there was more from where that came. In fact, the powers were relentless, and brought with it some feedback as well. But even then, Lin Fan wasn't fearful in the least bit. He was someone who still had some tricks up his sleeves. However, whether or not he could kill this bald monk was another issue altogether. Amitabha, benefactor, it wasn't easy for you to cultivate to the supreme state. Please do not squander your life away just for this sinner of the Buddha race. With that single attack to test the waters, the ancestral Buddha had already managed to feel out the depths of the other party's strength. However, the ancestral Buddha was surprised nevertheless to find out that this human would have the strength of supreme state. That was pretty incredible. And that wasn't even the most unbelievable thing. It was the fact that this human seemed to be a product of this era alone. That was the unbelievable thing. In the past few eras, there had been utmost powerful beings from the human race as well. However, they had already fallen. In fact, they even had the chance to go into slumber or reincarnate. With the severing of the legacy of those utmost powerful beings, there should definitely be no descendants of the human race who could break through to such a state. Indeed, that bald monk was only testing him, and that was all. However, Lin Fan was still unfazed. It was not as though something as such was enough to cause him fear. This bald monk, I'm protecting him for sure. Lin Fan declared imposingly. By now, Reverend Shakia was so touched he was almost going to cry. This was what true love was. The strength of this ancestral Buddha before him was something that everyone had witnessed and acknowledged as absolutely formidable. Yet even at this moment, his old bro was determined to protect him. This was something that moved Reverend Shakia endlessly. He could not even wait to offer himself in marriage right now. Old bro, this debt is something that this poor monk will never ever forget. Reverend Shakia sniffed out with tears. He did not even mind those 2 basketballs hanging from his chest right now. Yes, you finally know how nicely your old bro treats you, right? Lin Fan replied. Reverend Shakia wiped the tears off the side of his eyes and nodded his head gratefully. Yes, I know now. Reverend Shakia could not have imagined that there could still be someone who would treat him this nicely in this entire world. He was truly so touched that he was about to fly into the heavens right now. The ancestral Buddha looked at Lin Fan and could not help but scoff out, "Benefactor, since you're so stubborn and resolute, your ancestral Buddha has no choice but to drag you into the Western Pure Land and make you listen to my teachings." The golden, stern face of the ancestral Buddha was dignified and mighty, as a radiant, golden gleam of light shone down upon the world. Any demons in the face of this would dissipate into smoke immediately. Hold on. At this moment, Lin Fan suddenly raised his hand, indicating for a timeout. Benefactor, could it be that you're finally to mend your ways and are willing to hand over that sinner of the Buddha race now? The radiant voice of the ancestral Buddha boomed out from within the void. Within that single sentence, an unparalleled amount of heaven's authority was bound. Please give me 3 seconds. Lin Fan said. All right. The ancestral Buddha nodded his head. Lin Fan laughed out coldly in his heart. Seemed like it was truly time for him to shine this time around. Open up Supreme Set, Lin Fan commanded in his mind, hurrying the system to open up that Supreme Set that was gifted by the system itself. In Lin Fan's opinion, any product of the system must definitely be something exquisite. If he were to wear this Supreme Set, who knew if he might even be able to whack this ancestral Buddha to death. Ding! Obtained Supreme Set, equipping it automatically. Shing! All of a sudden, Lin Fan's body was covered up by a bright beam of light. But, Lin Fan suddenly realized that there was something wrong with this set. He was wearing dragon robes on his body, with a king's crown with tassels, hat of Qin Shuang on his head. The golden beads in front of it were practically covering his eyes and blocking his entire vision. Holy FCK, this mother CKER is just messing with me. PFFT. And right at that moment, Reverend Shakia burst out laughing uncontrollably. What are you laughing at? Lin Fan turned his head around asking. Old bro, where did you get that costume from? The words that are written on its back are simply way too much of a joke. Reverend Shakia covered his mouth to contain himself from bursting out into laughter. Lin Fan was indignant right now. There were even words. Lin Fan immediately took off his clothes. When he saw the words behind, he was totally stumped. Human race, invincible, all FCK your grandmother. Lin Fan yelled out. What kind of a bloody cheesy phrase was this? But at this moment, Lin Fan could not be bothered with this any longer. He wore the clothes back immediately. Ding! Human race supreme set equipped. Ding! Function activated. Invincible mode. 10 seconds. Ding! Human race supreme weapon. Demon slaying god vanquishing Gatling gun. Shing! All of a sudden, the void trembled out as though something horrifying was going to appear from it. The ancestral Buddha, who had been watching everything, started furrowing his brows. He then turned around and looked at Lin Fan sternly. And what in the world is this sh*t? When Lin Fan caught sight of this demon-slaying god-vanquishing Gatling gun, he was completely stunned. Wasn't this just bloody? A gun in hand and the world is mine. When he laid his hands on that supreme weapon of the human race, Lin Fan felt as though he was going to go into SEED mode. The power that was surging through him rumbled endlessly within his body as though it could burst forth at any moment. HMPH. Seeing this, the ancestral Buddha was enraged. A bright Buddha light encompassed the entire place and an apparition stood upright within it. That apparition looked extremely dignified and solemn, exuding an immense might that enshrouded the area. Every single movement it made brought forth a tremendous force. Old bro, no matter what, you've got to be careful. That's the most powerful apparition of the entire Buddha race. When Reverend Shakia caught sight of the apparition cast by the ancestral Buddha, he yelled out. FCK, playing with apparitions. Do you think that yours truly doesn't have one? Supreme apparition, Lin Fan roared out. Since this was the case, he could only fight it with all he had. Wielding the sun and moon in my hands as I pluck down the stars, there is no one like me in this world. At this moment, gigantic illusory figure appeared behind Lin Fan. This supreme apparition looked exactly like Lin Fan. But, at this moment, the supreme apparition wielded the sun and moon. One of his hands was raised like a bird perch, where a row of sparkling stars floated above it. He looked at the ancestral Buddha with an imposing expression, as though he was invincible throughout the entire world. Old bro, your apparition is practically heaven revolting. When Reverend Shakia caught sight of the apparition, his eyes nearly popped out. Will and law, everything was in the pinnacle state. This was especially the case for the sun, moon, and stars in his hands. They were just living existences. Seeing this *T, Lin Fan wasn't all that certain. However, Reverend Shakia was someone who was well versed in this. A truly formidable apparition was something that everyone could only dream about. However, creating such an apparition was undoubtedly more difficult than difficult. But now that there was an apparition like this appearing right before his face, how could Reverend Shakia not be shocked? When the ancestral Buddha looked at the apparition of Lin Fan, his heart skipped a beat as well, feeling extremely incredulous. How could a human that was just at the supreme state cultivate out an apparition as such? Benefactor, repent, and you shall be saved. The ancestral Buddha placed his palms together. The moment they closed shut, an immensely bright golden light shone out from between his palms and struck out at Lin Fan. Bald monk, yours truly shall give you a good fight then. Lin Fan could sense the feeling of impending danger coming from the ancestral Buddha. However, he wasn't rattled because of it. Wasn't it just a fight? Who was afraid of whom? Chapter 889. Don't move if you have the guts. Chapter 889. Don't move if you have the guts. How am I supposed to play with this Gatling? At this moment, Lin Fan was still trying to figure out how to play with this demon-slaying god-vanquishing Gatling gun. However, the Buddha light from the void was already reaching him. Old bro, hurry up and do something. Otherwise, it'll be too late. Reverend Shakia shouted out. At this moment, Chiki was also standing on Reverend Shakia's head while slapping his wings furiously. Everything was way too exciting right now. I found it. Finally, Lin Fan found out how to make use of that human race supreme weapon, and then moved his finger. Ritata-tata-tata. All of a sudden, a tremendous amount of power cruised through his entire body. The barrel of the Gatling gun was just like a fierce beast right now as it exploded forth with an incredibly unparalleled force. Every single bullet seemed to penetrate through even time, and blew up the Buddha light instantly. Holy FCK, so strong. Lin Fan looked at everything before him and was startled as well. This was even more ferocious than when he had gone all out himself. When the ancestral Buddha caught sight of this, he was equally startled. There was a weird glint that shone in those eyes of his that were filled with a Buddhist nature. This treasure. The ancestral Buddha was stunned for a moment. He had seen all sorts of treasures in this world. But, this thing before his eyes right now could still be considered pretty amazing. So cool. Right now, Reverend Shakia was completely awestruck by the might of this mysterious weapon. This was way too formidable, wasn't it? HMPH. The ancestral Buddha couldn't bear with this any longer as he roared out. That gigantic apparition of his roared out as well, causing the golden swastika on the chest of the apparition to revolve out through the void with an immense Buddhist nature to it. This was the true essence of the ancestral Buddha, and possessed an incredible amount of might. Suppress. A booming sound that was akin to thunder roared out. It was relentless as Buddhist music shrouded the world, causing heavenly flowers to drop down and all sort of weird phenomenon to occur. Picking a fight with me over our apparitions. Let's see who's afraid of whom. Lin Fan was enraged. The Gatling gun that was wielded in his hands burst forth with a formidable amount of power once more. At this moment, the apparition that was floating gently behind Lin Fna's back moved suddenly. That massive palm of his gave a tight squeeze, pushing that fiery red sun and sinisterly black moon together in his hands and fusing them together. Instantly, a red and black unknown round object appeared out of thin air. What's this? Lin Fan toyed with it in puzzlement. While he did not know what it was, he could sense that the power that it contained was extremely scary. It was something not to be underestimated. Benefactor, this is the Tao of your ancestral Buddha here, containing the spirit of all living beings. You shall not. The swastika was the strongest secret that the ancestral Buddha held in his possession. But, before the ancestral Buddha could even finish his sentence, something that scared him happened. The apparition of Lin Fan tossed that round ball in his hands casually. Nothing unusual happened, but, the moment it clashed with that swastika, an enormous amount of power burst forth and instantly turned into a black hole with a radius 1,000 miles. This was the extremities of a power that destroyed all the void around, causing a rampant amount of void currents to flow out indiscriminately. How could this be? The ancestral Buddha who had been watching everything calmly was totally not calm at all when he caught sight of this scene. He had suddenly discovered that the swastika that he had, which possessed every single being's spirit, was destroyed in an instant before being converted into nothingness and disappearing from the face of the world. HMPH. The apparition of Lin Fan snorted coldly as the sun and moon appeared in his hands once more. It was as though the sun and moon could be used for an infinite number of times. Tyrannical. When Lin Fan felt that rampaging power, he was completely stumped. Wasn't everything gifted by the system way too tyrannical? The power that came forth was way beyond Lin Fan's imagination. The only word to describe this was nothing short of horrific. Bald monk, I don't think you're anything much really. Lin Fan had to hold up the pearl tassels while saying, damn it, these things were just way too troublesome. Blocking out his vision was something that left him pretty uncomfortable. Amitabha, since you obstinately insist on persisting through your wrongdoings, benefactor, your ancestral Buddha here can only choose to send you down to hell. Even though the voice of the ancestral Buddha might seem like it was filled with a Buddhist nature, there was actually a ton of anger hidden within that tone of his. The impact of that single sentence was far from ordinary. It was as though every living being in the world was conquered by it. Boundless Buddhist doctrines that are as vast as the oceans. Passing of life. The ancestral Buddha chanted out Buddhist scriptures as a series of Buddhist lights shone out from behind his back like banners of lights that pierced through the entire world before fusing continuously. It was as though they were about to form a world of the Buddha race. This was the unparalleled Buddha powers of the ancestral Buddha. He could draw out the power of the Buddha race to create a special realm, so as to allow life to pass away within. This was meant for Lin Fan's death. This was no longer any mystic skill of a martial art. This was the true skill of the Great Tao. Great Tao of life's passing. Boom! The metal-like lips of the ancestral Buddha twitched slightly and gave off a clanging sound of metal. All of a sudden, something changed in the entire world. Lin Fan was enveloped by this boundless Buddhist power all of a sudden as a mysterious power of life passing surged through him. This was the most profound state of everything within the Buddha race. Benefactor, repent for your sins now and you will turn into a Buddha. Right now, your sins are immensely grave. Let your ancestral Buddha here cleanse you of your sins. The eyes of the ancestral Buddha shone with two heaven-piercing golden beams of light. It was as though these beams of light possessed everything that the ancestral Buddha had. Lin Fan's brows furrowed as he could sense a ridiculous amount of pressure coming towards him. Holy FCK, is he coming at it for real? Seems like I can only fight it out with him. If it was based on actual strength, there was no way Lin Fan could defeat the ancestral Buddha. But, with this supreme set of the human race right now, whether or not he could take him down was an entirely different issue. Bald monk, have a taste of what it's like to be shot by an endless stream of popcorns. Lin Fan roared out, rat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat. All of a sudden, Lin Fan realized that after he was enveloped by this formidable power of life passing, he could feel the essence, spirit, and vitality within his body being expended away and disappearing rapidly. It was as though he could pass away at any moment right now. Activate the 10 seconds invulnerability mode. This was the only characteristic of the supreme set, 10 seconds of being a true man. Shing, Lin Fan could feel a mysterious power that entered his body. It was as though this mysterious power was running its course throughout his entire body. After activating the 10 seconds true man mode, Lin Fan realized that the pressure surrounding him had disappeared entirely. Good, the time for me to exhibit my strength has come. Lin Fan snorted out coldly as the Gatling gun in his hands went even more berserk. Right now, the bullets had already torn through the limits of time. Even the void in front of him was like nothing but paper that was being shredded. Bang, bang, the Vajra indestructible body of the ancestral Buddha gave off the sounds of metal clanging after being struck by Lin Fan's bullets. Benefactor, there's no need to resist anymore. All of your attacks will have no effects on your ancestral Buddha. The ancestral Buddha smiled out confidently. But all of a sudden, a cracking sound traveled out. Creak, uck, the eyes of the ancestral Buddha were frozen and opened wide. He had realized in shock that his physical body was actually broken through by this ridiculous attack. Ha ha ha, bald monk, don't move if you have the guts. When Lin Fan caught sight of this, he burst out laughing wildly. Passing of life. Right now, the ancestral Buddha was thoroughly angered as he slammed his fists together. The power of life's passing tore through Lin Fan's body relentlessly. However, none of that mattered to Lin Fan. How could this be? The ancestral Buddha howled out with a face of disbelief. To think that his formidable power of life's passing would have no effect at all. Arg! When the bullets rained down on the body of the ancestral Buddha, it generated a series of sharp pain, causing the ancestral Buddha to howl out uncontrollably. Rat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat. Lin Fan was totally immersed in the tempo of the Gatling gun, and his head was just swinging left and right along with it as well. He wondered how the ancestral Buddha must be feeling right now. However, the ancestral Buddha truly wanted to say only a single sentence: what in the Mother Sea King world is this sh*t? Why the FCK does it sting so much? Chapter 890. Making a break for it. Chapter 890. Making a break for it. Bravo, my old bro. Reverend Shakia was yelling out wildly right now. It was especially the case after seeing how that darned ancestral Buddha was being whacked up so badly, and he could not help but laugh out. In the past few years, this was the old fogey who had ordered people to chase him down endlessly, causing his life to turn so horrendous. Now that his old bro was here seeking revenge for him, Reverend Shakia's heart naturally felt extremely joyous. That's the way, whack him, good job. What ancestral Buddha, you're still going to get walloped by my old bro all the same. Right now, Reverend Shakia's expression was extremely delighted. When he saw how tragic the ancestral Buddha looked, he laughed out madly. Pleasurable. This was simply way too pleasurable. For Lin Fan, the ancestral Buddha was nothing more than a big target. With such a huge body frame, one did not even have to aim, and just had to fire wildly. And right now, the ancestral Buddha could not even sit firm. Even though that golden lotus seat did not have much use to it, there was a load of style it possessed. When he went out with that, he definitely scored top points for style. But for the ancestral Buddha right now, this thing had Mother Sea King turned into burden all of a sudden. If he moved right now, all his style would definitely be gone. But, if he didn't move, the situation didn't seem all that right as well. This damned human was using some unknown treasure. The attacks did not even have a fixed shape, and were hard to check out properly. Damn it, just as the ancestral Buddha was contemplating about these things, the attacks of the Gatling gun got even more ferocious. Stings. The ancestral Buddha could no longer bear with it as he burst up standing immediately. That golden Buddha body of his had been attacked at every spot. Arg! All of a sudden, the ancestral Buddha started jumping and shaking his body left and right while his hands roamed all over his body. It was as though the pain was getting more and more unbearable. Benefactor, you have honestly, thoroughly riled your ancestral Buddha here. Go to hell, the ancestral Buddha roared as he slammed out with both of his palms. A Buddha land that was extremely huge descended down from the skies. Amitabha, within the Buddha land, a bright, golden Buddha light shone down on the entire place. Within there, Buddhas appeared one after another just like real beings of the Buddha race as they chanted out Buddhist scriptures. All of a sudden, the scriptures danced out of the mouths of these Buddhas one after another. The texts of these scriptures were like dragons and elephants. These were the scriptures of the dragon elephant, and possessed an endless amount of secrets, as well as a devastating power. Lin Fan noticed how this Buddha land did not seem like it was for show at all. Pointing his barrel towards it, he started firing at it. Rat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat. The Buddha land was immediately turned into a scrub with millions of holes all over it. It was an unbearable sight to watch. The Buddhas within were pierced through by the Gatling gun as well before exploding out and turning into nothingness. What's this sh*t? Right now, Lin Fan was already addicted to firing. He could not stop his hand actions at all as he turned around to face and fire at the ancestral Buddha once again. When the ancestral Buddha caught sight of that black barrel facing him again, his heart skipped a beat. He had a bad feeling about this. Rat-a-tat-a-tat-tat-tat-tat. Right now, Lin Fan could not even tell how this was a fight between powerful beings. This was more of someone just whacking a target. The body of the ancestral Buddha was tormented right now. That move from earlier on was stronger than anything else, and possessed all the true essence of the Buddha race. But, to think that it would have been shattered instantly without being able to produce any effect at all. When Lin Fan caught sight of everything before him, he already had a rough idea about everything. This supreme weapon of the human race was definitely unable to kill the ancestral Buddha. But, dealing some damage to him would not be an issue at all. The strength of the ancestral Buddha had already surpassed the supreme state. If he were only a supreme state being, he would have long been turned into a pancake. But right now, the state of the ancestral Buddha dancing left and right and jumping on his feet was still extremely awkward to look at. Bald monk, how is it? Are you feeling great now? Lin Fan laughed out wildly as he started gathering the power of Bigra. One after another, the Bigras were converging into round balls that were all ready to be shot out. Damned human. Right now, the ancestral Buddha was thoroughly incensed, and felt extremely aggrieved. This human was evidently not his match. But, that strange-looking treasure was extremely formidable. Even though it could not deal much damage to him, the amount of pain it was causing him was still a form of torment. Given his current strength, there should be no reason for his physical body to feel feelings as such. If that were the case, there could only be one reason: that treasure must have some extraordinary effect. Bravo, my bro, to think that the dancing style of the ancestral Buddha would be this tyrannical. Reverend Shakya was stunned at the sight before him as he laughed out uncontrollably. Kukkaku. Chicky was laughing out as well while flapping his wings furiously, nearly toppling over. If any other powerful beings were to catch sight of the ancestral Buddha right now, they would definitely be stunned. Was this still the ancestral Buddha from their memories? No matter when it was, the ancestral Buddha would always be dignified and stern while seated on that lotus seat. Even if he were faced with an enemy, it would always be a battle of consciousness, which alone could cause the entire world to topple over. Right at this moment, Lin Fan yelled out, "Power of Bigra! Surround the enemy!" PSHEW. All of a sudden, the round balls that were formed from the power of Bigra surrounded the ancestral Buddha. Bam! Bam! Lin Fan did not care about anything else right now as he just sprayed that Gatling gun's rounds without leaving any chances. Damned human, you had better just wait there for your ancestral Buddha. I must definitely send you into the Western Pure Land of ultimate bliss to suffer for all eternity. From within the mist that was being formed, the enraged voice of the ancestral Buddha sounded out. Seems like he's making a break for it. The 10 seconds of invulnerability were up. Lin Fan heaved out a sigh of relief as well. If he really had to go all out, he knew that he would definitely not be a match. However, being able to scare the other party off was a pretty decent option as well. Ding! Buddha race's impression points has dipped to a freezing point. They will not rest until you are dead. Lin Fan shrugged his shoulders helplessly. To think that he would have gained yet another enemy. He was pretty helpless by now. However, none of that mattered to him. He reared his head up into the skies. For that battle earlier on, he had only made use of the supreme weapon of the human race to chase the ancestral Buddha away. But, if he wanted to be able to fight against these truly powerful beings properly, he might have to step it up a notch. Right now, he had thoroughly offended the ancestral Buddha. Seemed like he would have to be more careful from now on. Why is the human race so pathetic? Can't we just have a single supreme powerful being that can rule over the entire world? If that were the case, I could just rely on that backing and grow up under his wings. By the time I became a heaven-revolting, powerful being, I'd be able to kill any gods and Buddhas that stand in my way, unlike now when I still have to fend for myself. Lin Fan could not help but lament out. He could only endure all of these worrying things by himself. Old bro, are we safe now? Reverend Shakya walked up while asking. Lin Fan kept back that worried expression of his and revealed his normal, despicable smirk. Aren't you just asking a stupid question now? Why don't you take a look at who your old bro is? However, we had still better make a run for it first. That bald monk is not someone easy to deal with. Waving his hands out, Lin Fan dove right into the void and sprinted off into the distance. Old bro, wait up for me. Reverend Shakya had just barely managed to escape death right now, so why would he want to remain at this place for any longer still? Therefore, he chased after Lin Fan instantly. There was no chance of him being able to return to the Buddha race anymore. Seemed like he could only go back and fight it out with that guy after he turned stronger on his own. At that time, he would then take over as the ruler of the Buddha race. He had even thought up his title, Shakya Rulai Ancestral Buddha. He would just replace the seat of the ancestral Buddha entirely. However, these were all just assumptions of Reverend Shakya on his own right now. He was still far from his goals. Chapter 891, The Hidden Eternal God Seat. Chapter 891, The Hidden Eternal God Seat. Base of the Buddha race. The face of the ancestral Buddha was grim, and his heart was raging even more furiously with blazing flames. He had taken a huge loss in this battle. To think that a human of a mere supreme state would be able to cause him to retreat. This was a humiliation that was beyond the heavens. Even if the other party paid with their fresh blood, they wouldn't be able to make up for this. Welcome to our great ancestral Buddha on returning. All of the Lama Buddhas and World Buddhas that were seated cross-legged started prostrating on the ground to welcome the grand return of the ancestral Buddha. In the hearts of these powerful Buddhas, the ancestral Buddha was an unparalleled, mighty existence in whom their faiths resided. As for all of those previous Buddha lords of the Buddha race, they could sense that there was a flame of rage burning within the heart of the ancestral Buddha. Seemed like he must have failed. It was just that with the strength of that lad, Shakya, how could he possibly escape from the grasp of the ancestral Buddha? Seemed like there must be some big reason behind this. Ancestral Buddha, seems like that sinner of the Buddha race must have been subdued with this trip of yours. One of the Buddha lords showed a respectful expression on his face. However, he was actually just gloating over the ancestral Buddha's misfortune in his heart. But just at this moment, the face of the Buddha lord changed. The ancestral Buddha who was seated on his lotus seat closed his palms together as the powers within the body of the Buddha lord instantly started going berserk. Bam! Without any premonition, the Buddha lord exploded out immediately and turned into dust. When the other Buddha lords caught sight of this scene before them, they were thoroughly infuriated. However, there was nothing they could do about it. Wansheng Buddha lord's heart has already been invaded by demons. Therefore, I had no choice but to release him from his sufferings, so that he can reincarnate earlier and return to the seat of the Buddha once more. The ancestral Buddha spoke up as though he was speaking about something extremely casual. Buddha is merciful. All the other Buddhas lowered their heads and muttered in a soft voice. Right now, the heart of the ancestral Buddha was burning with rage. How could he not understand what that Buddha lord was trying to imply? How could he possibly allow him to act so brazenly? At this moment, the ancestral Buddha left the place and appeared within a completely endless void. Today's affair was one that he had to settle immediately. For that human to dare to act so audaciously, the only path awaiting him was death. At this moment, the ancestral Buddha raised his finger and sent a long Buddha light into the void, penetrating through the boundless river of space and time. Ancestor of the star race, ancestor of the night devils, please have a meeting with your Buddha here. The ancestral Buddha muttered in a low voice. His words came out as Buddhist texts that floated in the void. All of a sudden, a galaxy river appeared within the endless void. This galaxy river was endless and filled with all sorts of stars. Within it was a particular ancient star that was flushed red, above which stood a figure. Ancestral Buddha, what do you require? Ancestor of the star race, we'll discuss when the ancestor of the night devils arrives. The ancestral Buddha replied. Right after the words of the ancestral Buddha finished, a pitch-black streak of light arrived from a distance. This black streak of light was the blackest thing that one could ever find in the entire universe. There was nothing blacker than this. Ancestral Buddha, what's the matter? The voice of the ancestor of the night devils was cold, and his eyes pitch black. If anyone were to exchange a single glance with him, they could just sink in and be lost in the endless darkness forever. The two emperors here, your Buddha would wish to seek help from you guys to take down a single human. The ancestral Buddha requested. While the ancestral Buddha might feel that there was something up with the human, taking him down naturally would not require him to personally come forth and seek help from these two emperors. There was something else he wanted to discuss. Hugh, the ancestor of the star race, laughed out. Ancestral Buddha, you asked for us to come over. I don't suppose this should be the only issue, right? For three of us to take action over a single human, it's not as though he's some heaven-revolting powerful being, is he? Naturally that human isn't of the greatest concern. I've heard that the great sage of the monkey race and goddess Nuwa of the snake race etc. had met in private, and have formed an alliance. Now that this era is on the cusp of destruction, the chance of a true eternity is still ever so elusive for us. If we don't band together, there's practically going to be no chance at all. The ancestral Buddha continued. There's such a thing. The ancestors of the star race and the night devils exchanged a single glance. Even though this was what they said on the surface, they had already understood this fact in their hearts. Naturally, it's not as though the words of your ancestral Buddha could be madness, could they? The ancestral Buddha replied. The 3,000 demonic gods of the ancient race were all competing with one another, and their hearts were not aligned. The same could be said for these great emperors of the thousands of races. All of them had their own agendas. The true path to eternity wasn't one that was so easily obtained. In the previous era, everyone was defeated and had to go back into slumber. Now that they were awakened, they naturally had to fight their way to the top once more. The ancestral Buddha said many things to these two emperors. However, the prerequisite for everything was for them to help him take down that damned human. For the ancestral Buddha, everything that had happened today was something that he couldn't endure at all. On the other hand, the ancestor of the star race ruled over all the endless stars in the sky. For him to seek out a single human in this vast world was something that he could do with ease. Where are we now? Reverend Shakya followed Lin Fan and came out of the void. He looked around him with bewilderment, not knowing where they had arrived. How could I possibly know? Lin Fan shook his head. The changes in this world had been simply way too huge. Along the way, Lin Fan could already feel a couple of different auras. These auras belonged to different races out there, and they were all grouped up into masses. He had sensed a few of those oppressors of the ancient race from the past as well. However, the current ancient race was not as dominant as before. Just that road along here earlier on, Lin Fan had already come across quite a few waves of ancient race beings that were slain by the beings of the thousands of races. And to Lin Fan's surprise, the cultivation states of the beings of the thousands of races had actually skyrocketed to an unbelievable extent. There were as many divine celestial level 7 beings as dogs, and comparable number of level 8 state beings that trawled around the entire place. He could grab a whole bunch of level 9 state beings wherever he looked, and there were quite some level 10 state beings. This was simply too huge a change, to the extent that Lin Fan was starting to think that this wasn't the same world as the one he had experienced before. And indeed, it was as Lin Fan had thought. The changes were great indeed. Compared to the past, the difference could only be described with nothing but heaven and earth. With the fusion of the infinite worlds, the laws of the universe had upgraded to an even higher level. In the past, reaching the divine celestial level 10 state was harder than difficult could be. But right now, as long as one's affinity was there, it wouldn't be an issue at all. By now, the changes in this world have been extremely intense. In the past few years when I was on the run, I had come across many places where sects were set up. Back in the past, all the beings of the thousands of races would group up in a bunch and join any sect. However, right now, they are all divided out clearly. Every race has a sect of their own, and they never accept anyone unless they are from the same race. These are truly some great changes. Reverend Shakia could not help but lament over the great changes that had taken place. Right now, the ancient race was no longer a problem for the thousands of races. Because of that, with this time available for them to grow, those genius disciples naturally soared in their cultivations and were unstoppable in their paths forward. Lin Fan did not say anything. These were situations that he had expected to begin with. And just at this moment, they sensed some commotion happening up ahead. When Lin Fan brought Reverend Shakia over to this place, he was already feeling a little puzzled. There were a group of beings of the thousands of races gathered facing a mountain up ahead. The mountain looked extremely normal. However, there was a tremendous amount of power gathering within it. The eternal God seed is hidden within. This time around, we must definitely get our hands on it. N-O-V-E in .c ohm. ... The moment Lin Fan heard this, he was surprised. An eternal God seed hidden in a forbidden ground. This was way too strange. Chapter 892, God Mountain. Chapter 892, God Mountain. The eternal God seed is something that I, Heavenly King Huang Shen, must definitely get my hands on. A big dude with half of his body nude stood upright. He was hundreds of feet tall, and had a bronze-colored skin, emanating a chilling aura. This was a powerful being of the giant race. Right now, his cultivation state was at the divine celestial level 9, 8 desolates United State. His aura was extremely thick, and was stronger than most other powerful beings of the same state. This was especially the case for that hammer behind his back that was shrouded by electricity and inscribed with mysterious runes. It gave off an aura that could devastate the heavens and crush the earth. Since when has there been a powerful being as such from the giant race? Lin Fan was bewildered, but when he thought about that king of the giant race, Kua Fu, some things began to make sense. Seemed like with the return of the utmost powerful beings, every single race improved tremendously as well in terms of their strength. Just this being of the giant race before Lin Fan's eyes right now, if this were 5 years ago, would have been a powerful being right at the peak. There was no way he would have remained silent and unknown. Heavenly King Huang Shen, the eternal God seat this time around might not belong to you. Beside the Heavenly King Huang Shen, there were a number of other powerful beings as well. All of they had cultivation states of divine celestial level 9, and they had a thick aura around them that was extraordinary. They were very different from the beings that Lin Fan had seen 5 years ago. This was all due to the changes in their fortune and momentum. And, it was evident that these changes were brought forth by those utmost powerful beings who had appeared. Bald Monk, do you know of their backgrounds? Lin Fan asked. Heavenly King, when this poor monk was on the run, I did hear something about this. The thousands of races have a ranking system now as well. Among them, the geniuses who are in the top 100 can enter the rankings. And, this Heavenly King Huang Shen should evidently be one of the Heavenly Kings of the ranking list then. Reverend Shakia replied. Lin Fan nodded his head. To think that they would have created a ranking as such. He then chuckled and asked, Bald monk, how could you not be inside that ranking then? Initially, I could have entered it. But, after being hunted down by the Buddha race, the chance was naturally gone as well. Reverend Shakia replied regretfully. The appearance of Lin Fan and Reverend Shakia did attract the attention of some people. However, the latter did not feel bothered with both of them at all. Right now, they were just waiting for that mountain peak to open up before bolting within and snatching that only eternal God seat. In the past, the eternal God seats were restricted by that existence within the unknowns. However, ever since the utmost powerful beings of the thousands of races had returned, these eternal God seats were scattered all around the world as well. Those powerful beings who were stuck at the Divine Celestial Level 9 state knew that they would be able to skyrocket into that mystical Divine Celestial Level 10, Eternal God state the moment they obtained an Eternal God seat. Are we going in later? Reverend Shakia asked. Of course we are. Why shouldn't we? Right now, your cultivation state is simply way too low. You must definitely be feeling an immense pressure on being my friend. Therefore, we've got to raise your cultivation state. Lin Fan chuckled out. The moment Reverend Shakia heard this, he even had the thoughts of committing suicide. How could this guy speak as such? What pressure and whatnot? This poor monk felt no pressure at all. Boom! Suddenly, the earth moved and the mountains shook as the towering mountain peak that extended into the clouds started trembling. It was as though they had been split open by a gigantic pair of hands, causing a gigantic crack that tore down from the heavens to lead down to the earth. The God Mountain is open. All of a sudden, all of those powerful beings who had been waiting transformed into streaks of light and bolted right into the mountain peak. For all of these powerful beings, time was of the essence. There was only a single eternal God seat. If they were any bit slower, they might be overtaken by someone else. Bald monk, let us go in as well. After the masses had headed in, Lin Fan then said slowly. In the face of a situation as such, Lin Fan was not at all hurried. After he entered the God Mountain, Lin Fan checked out his surroundings and couldn't help but let out a look of astonishment. This didn't look like a secret ground at all. It looked more like a dimension world. Mountain peaks lined up one after another, with no end in sight. At the same time, there were no ancient beasts at all. It was as though this was just a utopia of its own. But in Lin Fan's opinion, it seemed as though there was more to this place than met the eyes. Lin Fan was flying around in the void when he caught sight of the powerful beings from earlier on standing ahead as though they were discussing something. What are they doing? Reverend Shakia asked in bewilderment. A group of people just standing there. It was not as though they could be gossiping for nothing, could they? When Lin Fan landed amidst them, he found out that they had their path ahead blocked. Gazing into the distance within the mountainous valley, he saw an eternal God seat that shone with a godly radiance. There was a man expressionlessly seated on that eternal God seat. His aura was calm as if he was a dead corpse, without any motion at all. But, this was not the case for all of these powerful beings as their faces were grim. Heavenly King Huang Shen, the eternal God seat is just right ahead. Why are you not going? A man from the dragon race who was also a part of the Heavenly King ranking tried goading Huang Shen. Hue, there's no hurry, Heavenly King Huang Shen replied. However, he was filled with doubts in his mind. He did not know who that man seated on the eternal God seat was. Before he was clear about the facts, he would definitely not make a move. HMPH, the eternal God seat is just right ahead. Since you guys refuse to go for it, I will. A man from the Horns race roared out before unleashing all his martial arts and skills. He turned into a beast with a single horn on his head and dove into the void, reaching out for that eternal God seat. At this moment, some of the surrounding powerful beings could not sit idly anymore either. The eternal God seat was just right up ahead. How could they not go and fight for it as well? Pishu, yet another few figures broke through the sky and turned into lightning streaks that bolted for the eternal God seat. It's going to be a tragedy for these guys. Lin Fan opened up his mouth and spoke up. What do you mean? Reverend Shakia asked puzzledly. Hue, indeed, there must be something strange about this. For that existence which treats the eternal God seats as treasures, how could he possibly hand over the eternal God seats and scatter them around as such so obediently? Seems like he's just been waiting for people to take the bait. The previous life of that living being was lived as the possessor of that eternal God seat. Even though he has fallen, his consciousness remains and is still extremely formidable. While these beings of the thousands of races are of divine celestial level 9 state, they are simply too weak if they were to be compared with a true divine celestial level 10 state being like him. Lin Fan explained. Oh, so that's the case. Reverend Shakia nodded his head. However, he did not remind those beings of the thousands of races either. Right now, times had changed. In the past, when the thousands of races were oppressed by the ancient race, they were already having difficulties in bonding together. Now that the thousands of races had all grown stronger, all of them naturally had their own agendas. If they were to die, so be it then. Either way, it was none of his business. The eternal God seat is mine now. One of the heavenly kings of a divine celestial level 9 state howled out. As he used his fingers to pinch out at the void exploded as he tried to grab the eternal God seat in his hands. All of the other powerful beings could not possibly let him have his way as they tried their best to fight for it as well. But all of a sudden, the figure that was sitting on the eternal God seat bolted up. At that single moment, the clouds surged as the world shook. A sharp flash of light bolted up from the ground. Nobody had reacted to it just yet. However, by the time they finally did react to it, all of the powerful beings who were floating in the void came to a stop before standing there motionlessly. What's going on? All of the other observing powerful beings were bewildered, not understanding what was going on right now. But all of a sudden, crack, the head of one of those heavenly king dropped down, separated from that body as his blood sprayed all over the ground. An extremely sharp sword will burst forth from his body and penetrated through it. Bam! One of the heavenly kings had fallen just like that. Following that, the same thing happened to all of the other powerful beings. Their bodies exploded out as a thick river of blood stained all the mountains nearby. They did not even have a chance to get to rebirth through blood. Chapter 893, Go Level Up. Chapter 893, Go Level Up. Shock, horror. All of the powerful beings who were surrounding and watching inhaled a deep breath of cold air. This was something that was so horrifying that it was beyond their imaginations. To think that a few heavenly kings would have been killed just like that. They didn't even have a chance to fight back at all. At this moment, the man who was seated on that eternal God seat was still expressionless as ever. However, out of nowhere, a black sword had actually gently floated over to his side. The sharp flash of light from earlier had evidently burst forth from this black sword. Supreme of the Sword Tao. This was an eternal God state being who had mastered the Sword Tao to its highest point. Even if he had fallen, his Sword Tao was still immensely strong, and could slice through the firmaments. In its eyes, all of these divine celestial level 9 state heavenly kings were not even capable of defending against a single blow from it. Heavenly King Huang Shen opened up his eyes wide and glared at everything in disbelief. The air was filled with a thick stench of blood, which was the blood of many heavenly kings flowing around. But right now, the other party had merely used a single skill, which they could not even make out clearly, to kill all of these heavenly kings. How was this not shocking news for everyone? That must be a supremely peerless powerful being of divine celestial level 10 state. Why is there such a powerful being watching over the eternal God seat? One of the female heavenly kings asked. There were 9 tails spread out from behind her back. However, that soul-capturing appearance of hers was just pale with fright because of fear right now. The eternal God seat is right before us now. Do we really have to give it up just like this? Another heavenly king asked with indignance in his heart. Heavenly King Huang Shen was feeling aggrieved in his heart as well. Everyone, let's go at it together. No matter how strong this person is, he will definitely not be able to hold out against us. Who's going up first? How about you go first, Heavenly King Huang Shen? We'll follow close behind. Many of the powerful beings stifled out their laughter. How could they not understand what Heavenly King Huang Shen's intentions were? Wasn't he just trying to make them cannon fodder? The eyes of Heavenly King Huang Shen squinted slightly in anger. However, he did not respond to them. The situation right now was really troublesome indeed. But, he knew that whoever struck first would probably just die. Bald monk, let us go then. Lin Fan looked at the situation right now and knew that this was the time for them to make their move. Now that the masses did not have any other way, this couldn't be considered as him snatching away the belongings of kids anymore. After all, these kids had no choice. It was not as though they could do anything about it. Alright, Reverend Shakia was astounded by that powerful being who was seated on the eternal God seat as well. That flash of sword will was truly extremely tyrannical beyond words. At this moment, when the masses caught sight of a single man walking forth, it was only natural for them to cast looks of bewilderment. Who is this man? That monk is someone from the Buddha race. But this man here. It seems like he's here to give it a shot. But, if even we can do nothing about it, it's not like they can, right? At this moment, Lin Fan could only smile calmly and turn to the masses, since you guys can't get your hands on this eternal god seat, yours truly shall take it then. But this single reply had all the heavenly kings totally riled. Who are you? An existence that even we cannot take down. You think that someone like yourself is able to? Fellow brother, I'd advise you not to just waste your life like that. Hearing the persuasions of everyone else, Lin Fan did not pay them any heed. They had got to be kidding him. Wasn't that just a divine celestial level 10, eternal god state being? If he could not even take that guy down, that would be something now. HMPH. Just some guys who don't even know their places. That monk's cultivation state is only a divine celestial level 9 state as well. But, it's not too bad for someone to go toss their lives away. At least we can observe from the sidelines. Who knows if we're even able to make out any openings of the other party from his actions. Lin Fan shook his head. Seeing this eternal god seat, he was definitely bent on getting his hands on it. But, when he approached, the man who was seated on the eternal god seat suddenly bolted up and sent forth a torrential sword will. The one protecting that eternal god seat must definitely be a divine celestial level 10, eternal god state being without doubt. That sword will alone is not something we can defend against. Indeed, with just that sword will alone, who could even be its match? Clang. All of a sudden, that tremendous sword will surged through the entire dimensional world. That ferocity of the sword will was extremely sharp. Even the powerful beings who were quite some distance away from this place could feel the impact of that sword will. This sharp sword will severed everything. Even if they were divine celestial level 9 state powerful beings, they truly found it impossible to defend against. At this moment, all of their faces were frightfully pale, and there were traces of disappointment. If this sword will alone was enough to render them defenseless, that eternal god seat would most certainly belong to no one then. That figure wielded the sharp blade, and in 1,000th of a second, he brandished the sword extremely quickly before sending that sword will that glided through the world and penetrated through all the layers of space and time as it pierced over. We're dead. Towards the outcome of Lin Fan and Reverend Shakia, the masses already had a rough guess of what was to happen. Against power of this level, they could not hope to defend against it at all. This was power that surpassed everything. But, right at this moment, Lin Fan raised his hands gently. Placing two fingers together, he drew down in the air from top to bottom gently. All of a sudden, something that shocked the masses happened. That formidable sword will shattered all of a sudden. As for the powerful being who was guarding the eternal god seat, his body convulsed slightly before a blinding beam of light erupted forth from the top of his head and sliced him cleanly into two. He vanished just like smoke in thin air. The masses were stunned as their breathing got hurried. They found everything before them way too unbelievable. Bald monk, coming. Reverend Shakia was truly hands down in admiration towards Lin Fan's strength. This was just heaven revolting to be honest. Grabbing out with 5 fingers, Lin Fan instantly snatched the eternal god seat over and lifted it above the head of Reverend Shakia swiftly. Breakthrough then, Lin Fan said softly. With that eternal god seat, it should be time for Reverend Shakia to have a breakthrough. Boom. The moment the eternal god seat entered the body of Reverend Shakia, he started shaking while emitting a series of godly glows. This was a sign of him evolving. Reverend Shakia could only feel as though his entire body was filled with an unlimited amount of energy. It was just like a volcano that couldn't wait to erupt and burst forth from his body. As for Lin Fan, he checked out the void at this moment. It was as though there was someone who had been observing the situation from the depths of the void. At the moment when the person caught sight of the eternal god seat being snatched away, a sudden burst of anger erupted forth from him. But in a split second, that anger vanished into thin air as well, as though the person was just enduring it within himself. Lin Fan smirked out. Seemed like someone must have been manipulating everything from behind the scenes. However, the person did have some tolerance to not come out despite all of this. But, what Lin Fan did not know was that there was a pair of infuriated eyes glaring at Lin Fan from within the endless void. Lin Fan, just you wait. The eternal god seat was stuffed into that monk by that guy. Just who in the world is that guy? To think that he wouldn't even use it for himself after snatching away the eternal god seat, and would give it to that monk instead. This. How could this happen? We have crossed hundreds of thousands of miles to come here, just to get nothing at all. Damn it. While there are many eternal god seats in this world, no one has been able to grab hold of even a single one. When can we finally get our hands on one? At this moment, a burning flare of indignation blazed up in the hearts of these powerful beings. However, an existence as such who could take down the eternal God seat was someone they truly did not dare to offend at all. They could only hide all of these indignant feelings in their hearts and not reveal it out. Just at this moment, a bright Buddha glow emitted from the body of Reverend Shakya. This was especially the case for that great Buddha's light of purification within his body that occupied everything. It was undergoing an upgrade as well, to tread onto that stage of an eternal imperishability. Sinner. Right at this moment, the void trembled as an overbearing power streaked through everything, threatening to destroy the world with it. When Lin Fan sensed this aura, his entire face changed. FCK Me. Chapter 894, 3 Utmost Powerful Beings. Chapter 894, 3 Utmost Powerful Beings. Buddha sounds traveled throughout the entire world like heavenly music. A sky full of Buddha light rained down as an auspicious and peaceful power surged through the void. A gigantic golden lotus seat appeared within the void, on top of which was none other than the ancestral Buddha. At this moment, the expression of the ancestral Buddha was dignified. One could not make out anything weird about his expression, yet his heart was burning with an endless amount of fury. One should not wait overnight to seek revenge. For a powerful being such as the ancestral Buddha, how could he possibly endure taking such a loss in the face of the ant-like human? It's you again. Lin Fan's heart skipped a beat, feeling something amiss about this. At this moment, Reverend Shakya, who had just turned into an eternal God state being, woke up as well. When he caught sight of who it was that had arrived, his entire face changed as his heart palpitated. Chicky hung around behind Lin Fan and glared at the ancestral Buddha with his beady, thief-like eyes. For Chicky, a powerful being of that level was simply way too scary. Greetings to the ancestral Buddha. When the heavenly kings of the various races caught sight of who it was that had arrived, all of them were startled as well. To think that the utmost powerful ancestral Buddha of the Buddha race would descend at this place. When the ancestral Buddha caught sight of all the living beings, he spoke up softly, Amitabha. Seeing juniors as such, the ancestral Buddha naturally could not be bothered about them. But, he could not disregard the utmost powerful beings that were backing them in their respective races. For the ancestral Buddha, his favorite activity was to purify all of these so-called juniors and convert them into his Buddha race for him to order them at his whims. Bald monk, what are you here for? Could you have felt that the punishment given to you earlier on wasn't enough? Lin Fan was unfazed as he shouted out. But, this single sentence of Lin Fan had all the beings of the thousands of races astounded beyond words. To think that this fella before them would be so tyrannical. This person was the ancestral Buddha, the utmost powerful being of the Buddha race. Amitabha. The ancestral Buddha chanted out the Buddhist phrase and seemed neither happy nor enraged. Naturally, he would not toss his face away in the face of these juniors here as he spoke up, all of you can take your leave first. While all of these heavenly kings who hadn't obtained the eternal God seat felt indignant, they couldn't possibly disobey the words of the ancestral Buddha. Therefore, they just glared at Lin Fan and Reverend Shakya before diving into the void and leaving this place. When the masses had finally left, the dignified face of the ancestral Buddha suddenly changed and turned extremely dark. Sinner. Today, your ancestral Buddha is going to subdue you. Ha ha. Lin Fan burst out laughing loudly. He then put on a face of disdain, just someone like you. And, I wonder who was the one who was walloped like a dog by yours truly the previous time. Remember this now, if yours truly can whack you like a dog once, yours truly can whack you like a dog twice. Lin Fan continued. Old bro, are you really so confident? Reverend Shakya asked. Somehow, he didn't feel too confident this time around. Shut up and watch obediently. Lin Fan replied with a stern face. At this moment, Lin Fan had a feeling of impending danger. This was a feeling that was ever so mysterious. Ancestral Buddha, is this the human you were speaking of? His strength is truly weak indeed. Puny human, to think that you could rile the ancestral Buddha to this extent that he would have us come forth as well. Seems like you've got some capabilities, All of a sudden, two authoritative voices boomed out of the void. When Lin Fan heard the voices, his body shuddered intensely as his eyes shone with a serious look. Indeed, it was as he had thought. That bald monk had looked for help. Shing, the void vibrated as an endless galactic river flew out. As the galaxy river shrunk down, a gigantic dude stood tall between the world. At the same time, the entire world was filled with a black screen as an endless darkness consumed everything in its path. A young man with a devilish face placed his hands behind his back and glared at Lin Fan the same way he would look down on ants. Holy FC Kamoli. When Lin Fan caught sight of the two fellas who had sprouted out of nowhere, he was completely dumbfounded. Bloody hell, did they really want to push him to his wits' end? This was just completely not giving anyone a chance to make a comeback at all. The two emperors, you guys are here. When the ancestral Buddha caught sight of the both of them, he greeted them indifferently. Naturally, since we've already agreed to it, why wouldn't we be here? However, the strength of this human is simply way too weak. Supreme State, that's something we can easily defeat with the flip of our hands. Could you have suffered a huge loss in his hands, ancestral Buddha? The ancestor of the star race said with a stifled laughter. He then checked out Lin Fan. However, he could not tell anything special about this guy at all. However, the fact that a human could turn into a supreme state powerful being was still something that had the ancestor of the star race curious. And like human, there's nothing else to say other than kill. The voice of the ancestor of the night devils was cold. Towards any beings of this level, he had no interest at all. Lin Fan's head was practically exploding right now. This matter had blown way out of proportion than he could have imagined. He hadn't expected for the ancestral Buddha to want to hunt him down so relentlessly and not give him any chance at all. And, the most unexpected thing was that the ancestral Buddha would be shameless to the extent of seeking out two helpers along with him. Not only that, these two helpers were utmost powerful beings. Even just one-on-one, Lin Fan did not have the confidence of being able to kill them, let alone the fact that there were three of them right now. If they were to bloody all come at him together, Lin Fan would definitely be whacked up like a dog. Old bro, what should we do? Reverend Shakia looked at the two people who had arrived behind the ancestral Buddha and could feel a power that was like the deep abysses. Naturally, he knew in his heart that these two were extraordinary. Even though Lin Fan was strong, he was definitely not a match for them. What else can we do? Naturally, we're just going to run. Immediately, Lin Fan activated the ancient saint's sacrificial altar and was prepared to make his escape. Hue, puny and insignificant human, to think that you would try to attempt an escape in front of your ancestor of the star race here. That's pretty laughable. The ancestor of the star race smiled out calmly and used his finger to grab the void, pulling Lin Fan out towards him from within. Mysterious indeed, to think that you can connect out to the infinite worlds. But, it's a pity that you're that bit off. The ancestor of the star race chuckled out. Lin Fan's expression changed. He hadn't expected that he would be discovered for trying to escape using the ancient saint's sacrificial altar. This was a situation that Lin Fan could have never imagined. Trying to run away from our faces is undoubtedly a fool's dream. The ancestral Buddha said with a grim tone. For three utmost powerful beings to gather up just to kill a supreme state being. If word of this were to get out, they would undoubtedly be a laughing stock. What is there to even talk about with an ant? All of a sudden, the ancestor of the night devils struck out. With a single palm strike, he brought forth with him an apocalyptic power. Even though that was just a simple palm strike, it was something that was totally unrivaled in Lin Fan's face. Incinerate. At that moment, Lin Fan instantly burned up Shengyang pills and slammed out with a punch that collided furiously with the oncoming palm strike. A tremendous amount of power erupted forth. Lin Fan was sent flying backward as his eyes shone with a serious look. He hadn't expected that for powerful beings of this level, a single random palm strike could possess such might. Even after burning up Shengyang pills, he could not withstand it at all. Interesting. When the ancestor of the night devils caught sight of this scene, his lips curled into a cold grin. Lin Fan was infuriated beyond words in his heart. Bloody FCK his mother's eggs. Ding. Night devil race impression points dipped. Disgusted. Ding. Star race impression points dipped. Disgusted. The dipping of the impression points for these two races was something that Lin Fan had expected. Cuckoo. Chicky leapt up beside Lin Fan. When he caught sight of how the latter's mouth was spitting out blood, Chicky's heart was filled with pain. He then looked at the three utmost powerful beings and spread out his wings. All of you damned B***stards. Your Chicky here is going to poke you guys to death. Chicky, go back. Instantly, Lin Fan tossed Chicky into the arms of Reverend Shakia while his mind started churning furiously. Right now, the situation was truly extremely dangerous indeed. He had to think of a good way out of this. Chapter 895, Final Desperate Attempt. Chapter 895, Final Desperate Attempt. Bald Monk, Chicky, you guys head to another world first. Lin Fan did not hesitate at all as he kept Reverend Shakia and Chicky into the Xuanwang world first. Now that Xuanwang world and Earth had already been cultivated by him, they were just revolving around in his inner world. If Lin Fan were to fall, everything would disappear as well. Heaven and Earth smelt's protection. Lin Fan allowed the Heaven and Earth smelt to keep the Xuanwang world and Earth within it. It then shrank continuously until the heaven and earth smelt turned into a speck of dust. If he were to unfortunately fall right here, that could at least ensure their safety. When the three utmost powerful beings discovered that the bald monk and the chicken had disappeared all of a sudden, they were surprised as well. But they did not put it to heart. For the ancestral Buddha, his greatest wish right now was to have this human before him slain. At this moment, Lin Fan heaved in a huge breath of air. He then looked at the three utmost powerful beings that were up in the void and shouted out furiously. "You three little shish ts, aren't you guys shameless to come at me 3-on-1? Come and fight me alone if you've got the guts." HMPH. The ancestor of the night devil snorted coldly, causing a loud soundwave to reverberate throughout the world. "You're trying to see who was the louder voice? Who's afraid of whom?" Lin Fan sucked in a huge breath of air before channeling out the heavenly dragon's music instantly. "Guys, this human possesses some precious treasure. Let us join forces and take him down," the ancestral Buddha remarked calmly. In his eyes, this human was already dead. There was definitely no chance of him making out of this alive now. If even the three of them could not take down this single human, that would truly be a laughing joke. Instantly, the body of the ancestor of the star race burst forth with a tremendous, boundless aura. Following that, the aura started converging as he punched out with his fist, causing a bright, godly glow to shine through. This single fist possessed the entire endless galactic rivers, sending one dead star after another plummeting down. Lin Fan inhaled a deep breath. Against these three utmost powerful beings, he no longer had a way out of this. Seemed like he could only give it a shot. So what if the three of you are utmost powerful beings? Even if yours truly were to fall today, I shall have you guys pay a terrible price for it. Lin Fan roared out furiously as the powers within his paradise started rumbling. The big ancient demon, cruel, ancient one, and the others all howled out furiously. A relentless amount of power gushed out of Lin Fan's body as he struck out with a single fist that contained an extreme amount of power. The void started shattering as the stars started exploding. Bam! Lin Fan yelled out. Right now, his aura was already at its peak. This single fist was Lin Fan's pinnacle fist that possessed everything he had. However, in the face of the fist of the ancestor of the star race, it still seemed pretty tiny. The difference between cultivation states wasn't one that could be crossed this easily. Boom! A tremendous amount of power was rebounded back and that unparalleled god body of Lin Fan's began to crack like a turtle's shell. Ding! Eternal god body experience points plus 100,000. Some capabilities you've got there. But, it's a pity it's still too far off. The ancestor of the star race's casual punch had caused Lin Fan to expend all of his entire might just to fight it. The ancestor of the night devils gave off a look of disdain. As for the ancestral Buddha, he placed his palms together before slapping out with a single palm. The Buddha's lance started descending as it brought forth an endless amount of Buddha power that penetrated the void and slammed down straight at Lin Fan. Bam! At that moment, Lin Fan screamed out. That cracked body of his burst forth as countless pieces of flesh and meat rumbled around furiously in the void. Unlimited essence chi, rebirth. With that, the mythical parasol tree burst furiously as those thousands of tree branches started squirming, bringing forth a wave of life force that flushed all over Lin Fan's body. The flesh and meat began to rumble furiously as they started regrouping once more. To think that this human would be in control of the mythical parasol tree. That's the first god tree that existed within the entire universe. But, it is still far from its pinnacle state right now. The ancestor of the star race glared at Lin Fan with a weird expression. He then laughed out coldly before reaching out into the void with his fingers. Boom! All of a sudden, a tremendous amount of power burst forth. The mythical parasol tree that was embedded deep in the endless void suddenly seemed as though it was being dragged by someone and trying to fly out of Lin Fan's body. The mythical parasol tree must have been hoodwinked for it to land in the possession of a human like yourself. The ancestor of the star race roared out, unable to believe that this human would be in possession of such a treasure. When the ancestral Buddha caught sight of the mythical parasol tree, his brows twitched with joy. But, as though he had suddenly thought of something, he looked somewhat disappointed afterward. The ancestor of the night devils howled out, "Ancestor of the star race, let's split that mythical parasol tree half each." FCK, do you guys really think that yours truly is a pushover? Right now, Lin Fan was truly riled. To think that he would be suppressed down by these two utmost powerful beings, human race's supreme weapon. All of a sudden, the Gatling gun appeared in the void and started spraying out. But, the two utmost powerful beings did not pay much heed to this weird weapon. Both of you guys, watch out. There's something up with that weapon. The ancestral Buddha warned out. At this moment, the ancestors of the star race and the night devils still weren't exactly bothered. However, all of a sudden, the arm that grabbing onto the mythical parasol tree suddenly let go after receiving a series of sharp pains. The two utmost powerful beings looked at this mysterious weapon with a look of astonishment, to think that this weapon would wield such strength. What sort of existences were both of them? For them to have to retract their bodies and to even feel pain from it, what sort of an idea was that? *T man. I had better not have my life cut short here for real. Lin Fan huffed out heavily. With the life force of the mythical parasol tree boosting him, he would not lose his life just yet. But right now, that unparalleled god body of his was already broken. This was something that Lin Fan was coming across for the first time. Amitabha, benefactor, your sins are grave. Therefore, it's only natural for you to receive karma. Now that it has arrived in your face, I wonder how you're feeling now, benefactor. When the ancestral Buddha caught sight of the miserable state Lin Fan was in, he could not help but laugh out. Right now, Lin Fan was only an ant that was being toyed around in the hands of these three utmost powerful beings. He could barely even stand up, and could easily be squished to death by them as and when they willed. Bald monk, you had better shut up for your father here. Don't come here and spout out your lies and false righteousness. Cooey, Lin Fan spat out. Lin Fan could tell that this bald monk was just a petty little b*tch. He had only taken a single bit of loss in the hands of Lin Fan, and yet he had sought out help immediately. And not only that, he had even sought out two equally powerful helpers. How bloody extravagant was that? Ha ha ha, the ancestor of the star race burst out laughing. Kid, you're truly decent to be able to face up to the three of us without fear. In order to reward you for that, I shall let you have a glorious death then. All of a sudden, the face of the ancestor of the star race sterned up. His palms trembled slightly as an unlimited number of stars started vibrating, causing a tremendous power of the stars to descend out from the void. Suppress, the ancestor of the star race said out with a soft voice as he flipped his palm. All of a sudden, all the stars started crushing down on Lin Fan just like a waterfall. That boundless amount of power destroyed everything in its path, causing Lin Fan's face to change. N-O-V-E-N.C-Om. Supreme set, 10 seconds of invulnerability, boom. Lin Fan did not hesitate as he entered that invincible mode immediately. And right at this moment, the waterfall of stars gushed down onto Lin Fan. Star Ancestor, this move of yours is indeed unparalleled and brings forth with it an unrivaled power. That human must be dead for sure. When the ancestral Buddha caught sight of this, his lips curled into a grin. But all of a sudden, a figure appeared right in the face of the ancestral Buddha. Bald monk, even if yours truly were to die, I have to let you know of just how strong I am. At this moment, Lin Fan could only make a desperate attempt at death's door. If there was no miracle, he was definitely dying for sure. But even if he had to die, he had to let this bald monk know just how strong he was. Chapter 896, Why aren't you assisting me yet? Chapter 896, Why aren't you assisting me yet? What? The face of the ancestral Buddha changed. Within his eyes, a pair of fists were getting larger by the second and were etched into his gaze. Bam! The golden body of the ancestral Buddha was imperishable and impenetrable by any evils. There was nothing that could break it at all. And even if he were totally caught by surprise right now, he could still instantly deploy his golden body mystic skills and burst forth with a bright series of golden lights, trying to block Lin Fan outside. But all of a sudden, the face of the ancestral Buddha changed. How could this be? F***ck your father. Blood-bursting fist of the North Star. Bam! Lin Fan's skills were ferocious as he kicked out furiously at the crotch of the ancestral Buddha. Arg! True Origin's crushing kick was something that Lin Fan had already cultivated to an extremely high state. With a single kick, the entire world, including gods and ghosts, would weep over it. No one could block this at all. That merciful and dignified face of the ancestral Buddha vanished instantly, and was replaced with a look that was grimaced in pain. This was the first time the ancestral Buddha was feeling a numbing pain. This feeling was mysterious, as though his entire body was about to crumble under the pain from this single kick. His heaven-revolting Buddha heart shattered at this moment. For the ancestral Buddha, there was nothing he wanted to do more now than to rub those aching balls of his. Arg! You sinner! I'm going to kill you! The ancestral Buddha howled out while arching his body and rubbing his balls. His face was alternating in shades of green and white, looking extremely terrible right now. Rubbing and rubbing, rubbing and rubbing. However, the pain still persisted. Now that there were two other utmost powerful beings here, how could the ancestral Buddha lose such a huge amount of dignity? But right now, the pain that was surging through his body was causing him to almost break down entirely. How could he be bothered about anything else at this moment? What's up with the ancestral Buddha? The two utmost powerful beings looked at the behavior of the ancestral Buddha right now with a weird gaze. His disposition as an utmost powerful being had vanished, and he just looked like a dancing ant. Looking at the pained expression on the ancestral Buddha right now, Lin Fan's heart was overwhelmed with joy. Smelly bald monk, do you know of the prowess of yours truly now? Go to hell, Lin Fan roared out. Now that he had the chance, how could he possibly give up on it? If he could kill this ancestral Buddha, he might perhaps have a chance of getting out of this alive. Help me, the ancestral Buddha wanted to retaliate. However, the numbing pain of his balls rendered him totally immobile. Therefore, he could only seek help from the other two utmost powerful beings. At this moment, Lin Fan was all prepared to kill the ancestral Buddha entirely when all of a sudden, he felt a tremendous force coming at him from his sides. Lin Fan grit his teeth to face it. But suddenly, his face changed. 10 seconds of invulnerability ended. Holy FCK, couldn't it last for just 1 second longer? Lin Fan yelled out. This was practically like bumping into a ghost. However, this was too rare of a chance to pass up. If he were to miss this, there might not be a next time anymore. Ancestral Buddha, go to hell. Boom, the boundless power crushed down on Lin Fan's body. When Lin Fan felt that power, his entire face changed instantly. His body ripped out with an endless amount of cracks as though it could break down at any moment. Bam, damn it, I just need this bit more. At this moment, Lin Fan was floating in the void gently as the cracks on his body made him like the back of a turtle's shell that was facing an imminent breakdown. The ancestral Buddha had already escaped further into the distance. That extremely pained expression of his was accompanied by a look of fury. He could not wait to take the chance and rip Lin Fan apart into shreds, then chop him down to death immediately. Lin Fan felt extremely helpless in his heart. How FCKED up was this mother CKER? Just the looks of this bald monk alone were repulsive enough. If he could kill this guy, at least he could comfort himself with that fact. But now that this bald monk was hiding somewhere far, it was basically impossible for Lin Fan to go FCK him over. You've truly got some capabilities. The fact that the ancestral Buddha could be pushed to such an extent by an ant like you is something that's unexpected. This must mean that you have many secrets on your body. Human, your ancestor here shall have you killed and steal your soul. The ancestor of the night devils burst out laughing wildly as he spread open his fingers and that gigantic pitch-black hand tore the void. Hold on, hold on. At this moment, both Lin Fan and the ancestral Buddha spoke up together. Lin Fan was startled. Could it be that the bald monk had seen how tyrannical he was and could not bear to kill him? Night ancestor, leave this human for me. After I kill him, I will not take any of his possessions. Unless I kill him personally, I will not be able to quench the indignance in my heart. The voice of the ancestral Buddha was deep like that of a wild beast. He wanted to kill Lin Fan with his own bare hands. The ancestor of the night devils looked at the ancestral Buddha and closed back his fingers. Instantly, that gigantic black hand vanished. So be it, the ancestor of the night devil replied indifferently. A pitch-black screen then enveloped the entire world, causing the void of this region to be severed and isolated from the entire world outside. At the same time, it was as though Lin Fan was caught in a cage right now. No matter how hard he struggled with all his might, he could not break free of it at all. He was a fish in a net. Right now, there was truly nowhere else for Lin Fan to run. You are quite the character for you to be able to force the ancestral Buddha to this extent. But, it's a pity that you have no future left for you. The ancestor of the star race said. He then pointed out with his finger as a martial arts mystic skill burst forth immediately. Bam, Lin Fan did not feel anything. However, all of a sudden, a hole pierced through his body from his chest. Dark red, fresh blood started oozing out from the spot. Ancestral Buddha, you've got to hurry it up a little. To spend so much time on an ant is such as something that's extremely boring. Human, when you asked us to hold on earlier on, was there anything you had wanted to say? The ancestor of the star race asked. N-O-V-E in .c ohm. At this moment, the ancestor of the star race and the ancestor of the night devils were filled with a toying intent in their gazes. Lin Fan coughed out furiously as the life force surged in hurriedly to repair his body. However, that single finger by the ancestor of the star race earlier on seemed to have severed everything. Lin Fan could not use his life force to repair his body at all. Damn it, Lin Fan laughed out coldly. He then raised his head as his eyes were filled with a resolute intent. I wanted to say. FCK your father. Bam! The ancestor of the star race pointed out once more as yet another blood hole appeared on Lin Fan's body. This Mother Sea King hurts. Tragedy. This time, it was probably truly a tragedy. Had he known that this would be the case, he would have gone on all the way with the Fire Water Empress for that great battle. Even if his little brother had to be broken from it, Lin Fan would have never given up on it. But, it was a pity that it was all too late for those regrets. Fire Water Empress, why don't you come and save me right now? This is the time I'm truly in need of your help. Death Demonic God, how about you come on too? I'm willing to let you whip me as you will as well. And this bloody system, weren't you the bloody strongest one ever? Why aren't you hurrying to come out and assist me right now? These were the thoughts that were running through Lin Fan's mind. How now, human? The ancestor of the star race was evidently just messing around with Lin Fan right now. At this moment, Lin Fan was extremely unhappy in his heart. He wiped off the fresh blood from the sides of his lips. Your daddy will never ever fear anyone. Burn. Instantly, Lin Fan burned up all of his Shengyang pills as a formidable sword will burst forth into the heavens. 5 elements completed. Power of the paradise. Slay. All of you dogs *TS. If your daddy here doesn't die, I'll be sure to slay all of you FCKS. Lin Fan roared out as a boundless sword will tore through the void. The amount of Shengyang pills he had burned up could fill up a vast ocean. The might of this single sword was enough to devastate the entire world completely. Boom! The berserk sword will was just like a god dragon that soared up into the void and flashed out with a bright radiance, threatening to cut down everything. Ha ha ha, ant. When the ancestor of the star race caught sight of this, he laughed out momentarily. An ant is an ant no matter what. How dare you try to fight against the sun and moon that are beyond your reaches? Bam! He then flicked out his finger and caused a single fingernail of his to explode, which brought forth a galactic river. This galactic river possessed countless of planets as though it was a universe of its own. So what if your ancestor lets you destroy one of my galactic rivers? The ancestor of the star race said with a casual tone. Slay. Bam! The sword will cut through everything. However, it could only manage to destroy this galactic river that was summoned by the ancestor of the star race. As for the ancestor of the star race himself, he wasn't affected by it otherwise. Lin Fan stood there in the void and was slightly breathless. As for the ancestor of the star race and the ancestor of the night devils, they placed their hands behind their backs calmly without being affected by anything at all. This was the gap in their powers and was something that could not be surpassed no matter what. Lin Fan was truly indignant right now. And at this moment, the ancestral Buddha finally recovered to his normal self. He then howled out in anger, human. Your ancestral Buddha shall have you incapable of reincarnating for all eternity. Chapter 897, Severing the Future. Chapter 897, Severing the Future. The ancestral Buddha was burning with rage. Since when had he been pushed to such an extent by an ant over multiple eras? In fact, he had even lost his face in front of 2 other utmost powerful beings. This was something he simply could not endure. Even if he were to shred the other party into pieces right now, it would not be enough to quench the hatred in his heart at this moment. Lin Fan was at the end of his path, with nowhere else to run. Bald monk. Even if you were to kill your daddy, you will never be able to wash away the fact that you were whacked down by your daddy for all eternity. Shut up. The ancestral Buddha roared out as that golden Buddha body of his jerked. Those Buddha eyes of his were filled with an endless fury right now. Your ancestral Buddha shall kill off every single last incarnation for all eternity, so that you will turn into complete nothingness. Ha ha ha, bald monk, you had better just wait for your daddy. So what if I were to be killed by you in this lifetime? Come the next lifetime, the next lifetime, I would definitely hunt you down relentlessly. Lin Fan burst out laughing. Since he had no other way out of this, he might as well give it all he had. Even if he had to die, he wanted to die with his head high. As long as his consciousness wasn't destroyed, he could reincarnate once more. Lin Fan hadn't expected for himself to ever reach this point. The path of cultivation was indeed one that was fraught with dangers, and would never just be a smooth sailing. HMPH. Next lifetime. Do you really think that your ancestral Buddha would give you a chance like that? The Supreme State's consciousness is undying, similar to being imperishable and everlasting. But, it's a pity that you met with your ancestral Buddha's Triple Lifetime Reincarnation Sutra. The Triple Lifetime Reincarnation Sutra of the ancestral Buddha is truly powerful. It can slay off all your eternal lifetimes and sever everything. Even if your consciousness is undying, it can only vanish like smoke and disappear into nothingness. The ancestor of the star race said calmly. However, his eyes shone with a look of greed. This triple lifetime reincarnation sutra could be said to be one of the most mysterious sutras in the entire world, and possessed an incredible power. The fact that the ancestral Buddha was able to reach where he was today was closely connected to the triple lifetime reincarnation sutra. Shing! All of a sudden, a mysterious and unrivaled power caged Lin Fan up within it. What the sh*t is this? Lin Fan's heart was taken aback. What in the world was this bald monk thinking of doing? Naturally, Lin Fan knew about the saying of the consciousness being undying. As long as one's consciousness did not get destroyed entirely, one could continue to reincarnate for all eternity. However, even though the consciousness might not be destroyed, it could go into slumber. Whether or not it could awaken for the next lifetime was still a question. All of a sudden, Lin Fan could feel his consciousness within him being dragged out by something. Momentarily, an image appeared within the void. This was the image of his life back on Earth. Lin Fan did not know what this bald monk was trying to do. But all of a sudden, a maddened roar boomed out. Slay! Uck! Lin Fan's heart tightened as though he had just been dealt some severe blow. He spat out a mouthful of fresh blood. HMPH. Human, your ancestral Buddha has just slain off your past life and inflicted some heavy damage on your consciousness. All I have to do now is to sever your current life and your future life. No matter how strong your consciousness is, you will have no choice but to dissipate from the face of the world. The grim voice of the ancestral Buddha boomed out once more. Lin Fan's heart skipped a beat with a face of disbelief. How in the world could there be such a skill in this world? To be able to sever his past, present and future. This was just leaving him with no way out at all. He had to fight back against this. Hue, you don't have to try resisting. Even if you were to complain this up to the heavens, it would all be useless. I'll slay your future first, so that you can have a good look at how your future is going to vanish. The ancestral Buddha said with his cold voice. The triple lifetime reincarnation sutra started activating out once more. This was a heavenly mystic skill. Even the great Buddha's light of purification couldn't compare with this at all. This mystic skill was something that the ancestral Buddha had snatched over from a secret ground in the first ever era. Even utmost powerful beings were unable to fight against this, let alone a tiny human. In the blink of an eye, yet another image appeared. This method of slaying away all three of his lifetimes was way too mysterious. Even if Lin Fan had used all sorts of methods, he was still unable to defend against it. When Lin Fan raised his head, he looked at the image. Wasn't that his future? Snore, snore. When Lin Fan looked at the image, he was stunned for a moment. Bloody hell, wasn't that him? Why the hell did he look so pathetic? In the image, Lin Fan's future was asleep within a patch of void. And he was even dead asleep while snoring out loudly. He couldn't have looked any more similar to an ordinary commoner. Human, this shall be your future. Once your ancestral Buddha slays off your future, you shall have nothing to depend on. From there on, your consciousness shall disappear from the world entirely. The ancestral Buddha glared at Lin Fan coldly while he let out a cruel smirk. This is the pinnacle state of the triple lifetime reincarnation sutra, to slay away one's future. To think that the ancestral Buddha would have cultivated it to such a state. The ancestor of the star race commented. If he can combine all three lifetimes into one, the ancestral Buddha's powers would definitely surpass everything. By then, even we would be no match for him any longer. The ancestor of the night devils calculated in his heart. Their awakening for this era was to search for that last and final hope. If they didn't grab onto this chance, even they would completely disappear, and from then on, ceasing to exist. The world would be annihilated while time would just disappear. Everything would vanish completely and return to its initial state of nothingness, where there was no era, transcending beyond anything else. Bald monk, you had better stop. Let's talk things out. Lin Fan could sense yet another wave of disturbance within his consciousness. If this bald monk were to truly slay away his future, everything would disappear entirely. Even his consciousness would not be able to reincarnate anymore. Human, take a good look at how your consciousness shall remain asleep within the endless void before disappearing into nothingness, just like how you will be right now. The ancestral Buddha played with all living beings and severed their karmas. Slay. At that moment, the ancestral Buddha roared out. A bright Buddha light entered that image as a mysterious power crossed through the long rivers of time into the future, so that it could slay off Lin Fan's future entirely. F***ck. When Lin Fan caught sight of everything before him, he could not help but yell out. This mother cker. Bam! The lips of the ancestral Buddha let out a faint smile. Everything was within his control, and everything would disappear right before his eyes. Lin Fan felt his heart tighten. It's all over. But right at this moment, the ancestral Buddha caught sight of the image before him and started yelling frantically, "Impossible!" As for Lin Fan, he did not know what was going on just yet. But when he caught sight of his future image, he was stunned. That future him which was asleep rubbed his chest while muttering, a little ticklish. How could this be? How am I not able to sever it? I refuse to believe this. The ancestral Buddha howled out in anger. Slay. When he saw that severing flash of light seep into the image, Lin Fan closed his eyes in despair once more. But yet, at this moment, the maddened howls of the ancestral Buddha came through once more as Lin Fan jerked his eyes open. That future him was still sleeping and scratching his body. Ha ha ha, Lin Fan burst out laughing, "Bald monk. Are you FC King kidding me? You're thinking of slaying my future and yet you can't even slice off a single strand of hair. Who the FCK are you trying to scare? Impossible," the ancestral Buddha howled out. Slay. Slay more and more. I can't believe this. Slay, slay, slay. At this moment, the ancestral Buddha was crazed and started slaying down countless times. He could not believe that he wouldn't be able to sever the future of the other party. But at this moment, something that had everyone horrified happened. Slay your mother. Slay, slay, slay. Can't a man get a good sleep now? All of a sudden, Lin Fan's future self started scolding out before jerking his eyes wide open instantly. To think that my future self would have such a character to him. He's exactly the same as I am. Lin Fan laughed out in relief. And all of a sudden, an extremely frightening aura started bursting forth from that body of his future self. Chapter 898. It's all thanks to the ancestral Buddha. Chapter 898. It's all thanks to the ancestral Buddha. With the great amount of power that was gushing forth, Lin Fan, who was still in the midst of evaluating the scene, suddenly broke into a cold shudder as something changed with his aura. The current Lin Fan entered a complete state of oblivion. The future Lin Fan in the image stood upright. That initially calm aura from him had disappeared entirely. The moment he opened his eyes, it was as if the countless of stars were all quivering in the might of his presence. He was just like an ancient god that had resurrected at this moment after awakening from the chaos. Wherever he stood, he would rattle the entire ancient times and universes. This vicissitudinous aura had the ancestral Buddha and the others feeling extremely fearful as their bodies started breaking out in shivers. Who was he? The ancestral Buddha looked in fear. Even his voice was starting to sound hoarse now. "Aunt, are you the one who wishes to kill yours truly?" The expression on the face of the future Lin Fan was calm. But, the moment he opened his mouth and spoke up, the surrounding void began to explode out, and everything turned into nothingness. When the ancestor of the star race and the ancestor of the night devils caught sight of this scene, their entire bodies broke out in shivers. That's destruction. The emptiness void that can destroy everything. How could anyone possibly exist in that realm? Impossible. When the ancestral Buddha caught sight of this person before him, he felt as though his entire throat was being choked by someone, that he could barely speak anymore. HMPH. Irritating. A cold snort boomed out, causing the entire world to seem as though it was about to explode right now. Bam! All of a sudden, the entire body of the ancestral Buddha started to burst apart. Even that formidable consciousness of his was starting to vanish. This was extremely ferocious. The ancestral Buddha had only looked at him one single time, and he fell right after just like that, without even a chance to fight back. The moment the ancestor of the star race and the ancestor of the night devils caught sight of everything before them, they were completely flabbergasted as they collapsed onto the ground with a thud. "Senior, please spare our lives. Senior, please spare our lives." The ancestor of the star race and the ancestor of the night devils had completely lost it right now. That was the ancestral Buddha, an existence that was equivalent to theirs. But, to think that he would have been blasted apart with just a single cold snort. Even his consciousness had perished because of it. This might of the other party was practically invincible. It wasn't something they could stand shoulders to shoulders with. These two ancestors of their races could only prostrate on the ground, begging for their lives right now. How in the world was the future of that human like this? This was just impossible. At the same time, they were secretly hating in their hearts. Why in the hell did that bald monk have to try slaying all 3 lifetimes of his? If he had just slain this current life of his, wouldn't it be done? He just had to go and slay his future as well. And even more inconceivable was the future form of this human. This strength that he possesses was something entirely unimaginable. But at this moment, the faces of the ancestors of Star Race and the Night Devils changed. The future Lin Fan pointed out with his finger. While this looked extremely normal, it was akin to the entire world being destroyed for the two of them. No, spare our lives. Bam! An explosion happened, followed by another. The two utmost powerful beings of the two races had exploded out just like that. Small fry. The future Lin Fan looked at everything before him and shook his head helplessly before going back into that deep slumber. Silence filled the entire world. What happened just now? Why did I lose my senses all of a sudden? At this moment, Lin Fan woke up from his slumber, and his head was feeling a little confused. He had seen his future self moments earlier, but all of a sudden, he had lost all of his senses. Wasn't this just bloody toying with him? Where has that bald monk gone to? Where are those two utmost powerful beings as well? Lin Fan looked up into the void. Other than him, there was no one else here right now. That's strange. There's not even any small fry left. Just as Lin Fan was still bewildered, the notifications that came from the system almost had him jumping in astonishment. Ding. Slain ancestor of the Buddha race, ancestral Buddha. Ding. Experience points plus. Ding. Congratulations on cultivation state leveling up. Supreme state middle level. Ding. Slain ancestor of the Star race. Ding. Slain ancestor of the Night Devils. Ding. Congratulations on cultivation state leveling up. Supreme state upper level. Supreme state full cultivation state. When Lin Fan heard the notifications from the system, he was completely dumbfounded. This was just crazy explosive. But, this was not the end just yet. Ding. Obtained the ancestral Buddha's 36 grades lotus seat. Ding. Obtained triple lifetime reincarnation sutra. Ding. Obtained ancestor of the Star race's Star glorious records. Ding. Obtained ancestor of the Night Devil's source sealing technique. Ding. Obtained Star's Paramita. Star's Paramita. Grade. Ancestor weapon. Listening to the notifications of the system, Lin Fan could not help but gulp down his saliva. Bloody hell. This was crazy. He was practically skyrocketing. Bloody hell. That was FC King hell of a scare. I'm not going to refer to him as bald monk any longer in the future. The reason why I could make it out of this alive was completely and entirely thanks to the ancestral Buddha. If not for that fella, I would have long died. Lin Fan heaved out a sigh of relief in his heart. This was all thanks to luck. C. What did it mean for one's fortune to defy the heavens? This was what it meant. He was practically on the verge of being walloped to death, but who would have expected that the ancestral Buddha would inadvertently save him? At the same time, Lin Fan was extremely pleased with the items that had popped out. This was especially the case for that triple lifetime reincarnation sutra. That mystic skill was practically twisted. But, someone like Lin Fan might just be able to make good use out of it. Ding. Learn triple lifetime reincarnation sutra. Ding. Learn Star's glorious record. Ding. Learn source sealing technique. Learn. Was there even a need to ask? Lin Fan would definitely learn them for sure. That triple lifetime reincarnation sutra which could slay off all 3 lifetimes of someone was something that even one's consciousness could not escape from, and was heaven-defying enough. And this Star's glorious record was also an unparalleled mystic art, which could be considered as a skill as well. It could communicate with the endless powers of the stars, and use them to boost and strengthen one's body. This was something that would complement the eternal God body well. As for that source sealing technique, it was a mystic sealing technique that could seal up everything in this world. At this moment, Lin Fan held the triple lifetime reincarnation sutra and his heart began to churn. Suddenly, as though he had just thought of something, he broke out into a sinister smile. Replicate. Endless replication. Densely cluttered, thousands and thousands of triple lifetime reincarnation sutras lined out through the entire void. The predicament he had gone through this time around had Lin Fan realizing a simple fact. At times, even the mystic skills of his opponents could end up benefiting himself. Go on forth, my triple lifetime reincarnation sutras. The countless mystic skills from the Buddha race were scattered out into the endless void. For Lin Fan, the best possible outcome would be for more people to end up learning this. Star's Paramita. Lin Fan looked at the boat-shaped object in his hands. To think that it would be an ancestor weapon. Devour. Instantly, Lin Fan tossed the Star's Paramita into his paradise to let the big ancient demon settle it for himself. Now that the dangers had passed, Lin Fan heaved out a sigh of relief. Thinking back about the situation earlier on, it was truly extremely nerve-wracking. He was so close to being done in. Seemed like these so-called powerful beings were not as easy to get along with as he had thought. At this moment, Lin Fan released the Xuanwang world and earth from the heaven and earth smelt. The moment Chicky and Reverend Shakia got out and saw that Lin Fan was safe and sound, they felt a heavy burden lifted off their chest as well. Benefactor, it's great that you're all right. Reverend Shakia exclaimed emotionally. The situation earlier on was simply way too dangerous. Cuckoo. Chicky leapt onto Lin Fan's shoulders as he was still feeling the lingering fear after what had just happened. Honestly, it's all thanks to that ancestral Buddha of your Buddha race that I'm all right now. If not for that fella, I might truly have had to call it quits at this place today. Lin Fan replied calmly. After the fight this time around, Lin Fan truly understood that he was still way too far off from these truly powerful beings. But at that moment, a tragic shriek suddenly arose from within his paradise, released by the big ancient demon. Chapter 899, FC King Hell. Monkey. Chapter 899, FC King Hell. Monkey. Help me, I can't deal with him. You, don't come over, I'm not the one who wants to devour you. Master, why did you toss this sicko inside here? Help us. At this moment, there were countless of living beings who had their faces swelling with bruises in the paradise. The big ancient demon had it the worst, as his entire face was hammered so badly that it was beyond recognition. To think that all of you ant-like living beings would dare to try devouring me. That's just looking for death. At this moment, an imposing and domineering figure dominated the entire paradise with his fists. This middle-aged man was the weapon spirit of the star's paramita. When the ancestor of the star race was being killed, he could sense the formidable aura outside and was shivering uncontrollably, not daring to come out at all. But, after he entered this mysterious paradise, he realized that there were weapon spirits that were trying to devour him. That was something that naturally had him riled up. When he struck, the entire army went down. All of these ant-like weapon spirits were definitely not a match for him at all. All of you are really way too pathetic, aren't you? To think that so many of you could not even deal with a single weapon spirit. When Lin Fan caught sight of everything before him, he was completely helpless. However, when he thought about it, that made sense as well. The star's paramita was an ancestor weapon, with an extraordinary strength to it. Even the big ancient demon might not be a match for him. Master, help us. This fella is simply way too violent. The big ancient demon yelled out miserably. Master, I can't do it anymore. The Thunder Trainer King who had dedicated his life towards the path of training was now lying there like a dead pig. His eyes shone with a deep regrettable look. He was the reforming Buddha Lord. But, to think that he would be walloped to the point of breaking down by this accursed living being, without even the chance to fight back at all. This was entirely inhumane. Human, I am a spirit of the world. You had better let me out immediately. The weapon spirit of the star's paramita looked at Lin Fan and declared with a tone of displeasure. Hue, you wanna leave after whacking my people? Are you really dreaming? Lin Fan chuckled out before hitting over with a seal. That's the source sealing technique. All of a sudden, the weapon spirit of the star's paramita realized that his powers had been sealed up by the other party. He howled out, I am the weapon spirit of the star's paramita. Hurry and let me out. But, Lin Fan could not be bothered with a small little weapon spirit as such. I've already sealed up the powers of that guy. You guys can do as you deem fit. After leaving that sentence behind, Lin Fan left the paradise. At this moment, the big ancient demon stood up as a cold grin curled on his lips, HMPH. How dare you treat your emperor as such earlier on? Time for your emperor to teach you a good lesson or two. Arg, let me go. All of a sudden, a series of tragic cries rang out from within the paradise. Bald monk, what's up with you? Lin Fan suddenly realized that Reverend Shakia wasn't looking all that good, as though something had happened. Reverend Shakia looked at Lin Fan. He had a thought earlier on, thinking that this was not the way for him to carry on. When he met dangerous situations like earlier on, he could not even retaliate, and was just like a burden. Benefactor, this poor monk wishes to head out there and strike it out for a bit. Reverend Shakia spoke out the thoughts in his mind. Lin Fan was stunned, not expecting that something like this would come out from the mouth of Reverend Shakia. But, by the looks of his expression, he was firm and didn't seem like he was joking about this. Thereafter, Lin Fan understood his intentions. He could understand the worries that Reverend Shakia was carrying within his heart. All right. Remember this, your life is more important than anything else. Benefactor, don't worry, this poor monk is extremely smart, and will not die that easily for sure. No matter what, this poor monk is the vice party leader of the revolutionary army. Reverend Shakia naturally knew of how dangerous the world out there was. However, if a powerful being were to start feeling fear in his heart, he would definitely be trash for the rest of his life, and would not amount to anything much. This is the lotus seat of the ancestral Buddha. I have no use keeping it with me. You can have it. That golden lotus seat brought with it a myriad of mysterious effects. Not only could it boost one's Buddhist powers, it could stabilize one's fortune. For Reverend Shakia, those were naturally extremely important factors to help him with his cultivation. Lin Fan pointed out with his finger and a mystical talisman floated over. This is the Triple Lifetime Reincarnation Sutra. This is the mystic skill of the ancestral Buddha. Reverend Shakia looked at Lin Fan and nodded his head seriously. Placing his palms together, he continued, "Party leader, I'll be leaving now." Lin Fan chuckled out, "Go on. Hopefully, by the next time we meet, your powers would have truly strengthened. You had better not start feeling ashamed of yourself after seeing an even larger gap in terms of power between us." "How could that be?" Reverend Shakia yelped out. "Ha ha. ... After Reverend Shakia left, Lin Fan looked over into the distance. "Chicky, do you wish to head out and explore it out there on your own as well?" Chicky, who was still feeling exhilarated, suddenly froze up. "Old bro, I'm not going. Why should I go out and explore? It's enough with you protecting me. I am the great Chicky who shall lead a life of complete happiness in this perfect world. As for all of the dangerous stuff, I shall hand it over to you humanoid beings to handle." "Holy FCK, you're truly so darned lazy, Chicky boy." Lin Fan was helpless. "Koo." Chicky tossed his chicken head and reared it into the skies while crowing, as though he was extremely proud of that fact. "Pishu." Lin Fan dove into the void and headed off into the distance. At this moment, the falling of the utmost powerful beings of three huge races alarmed all the utmost powerful beings out there. They could sense one another. The moment those three fell, all of their faces changed, and were extremely startled. Suddenly, a Buddha light pierced out from the endless void around them. In a flash, a gigantic hand reached out into the void and grabbed hold of that Buddha light. Triple Lifetime Reincarnation Sutra. This is the mystic skill of that fella, ancestral Buddha, that he does not impart to anyone else. To think that it would end up here. At this moment, countless powerful beings could sense the power of Buddha that was coming forth from beyond the void as well. When all of them reached out to grab, they were equally astounded. This Triple Lifetime Reincarnation Sutra of the ancestral Buddha was something that all of them had dreamt of obtaining for a long time now. This was an extremely formidable mystic skill, and was more mysterious than anything else. Once it was cultivated to its pinnacle state, one could combine all three lifetimes and obtain an eternal body. Even if they couldn't manage to cultivate it to its pinnacle state, as long as they could even reach the state where they could sever someone's future, there would be no one in this world who could escape from their grasp. The slaying of three lifetimes. Even if one's consciousness was heaven-defying, they would have to vanish because of it as well. Haha, the Triple Lifetime Reincarnation Sutra. I've been waiting for this for a long time now. Seems like that ancestral Buddha must have thrown out the Triple Lifetime Reincarnation Sutra into the void right before he died. To think that my luck would be this heaven-defying for me to obtain this mystic skill right before the end of this era. Seems like my chances are only going to get higher and higher. All of these powerful beings who had obtained the Triple Lifetime Reincarnation Sutra were exhilarated beyond words. It was as though they had just obtained an utmost treasure. At the same time, they told no one else about it while cultivating it in secret. But, if all of these powerful beings were to find out that this Triple Lifetime Reincarnation Sutra was actually intentionally let out by someone else, they would truly be at a loss for words. ... At this moment, Lin Fan, who was traveling within the void, suddenly frowned as he had a feeling of impending danger. By the time he reacted to it, a boundless amount of power was swinging down at him and slammed harshly onto his body. Holy FCK, who the FCK is this mentally sick person? Lin Fan broke through the void when all of a sudden, a voice rang out in his ears. "Eat the stick of old monkey." When Lin Fan looked over, he was stunned. FC King Hell, Monkey, Chapter 900. And just like that, the favorable impression has risen. Chapter 900. And just like that, the favorable impression has risen. Stop that now. Are you sick in the head or something? Do I even know you? Why are you slamming me with your stick for nothing? Lin Fan dug out of that pit in the ground. When he caught sight of this overbearing monkey wanting to slam out at him with another round of the stick, he yelled out. Who in the world had he offended? He was just going on his own way while traveling through the void. At this moment, a single fella suddenly came into the mind of Lin Fan. Wasn't this the great sage equal to heaven that he had seen that time? Checking out his surroundings, Lin Fan garnered that he must have arrived in the territory of the monkey race. There were many living beings of the monkey race that were glaring at Lin Fan curiously from the sides. There wasn't much of a difference between these living beings of the monkey race and the human race. It was just that they were covered with a layer of yellow hair around their body. The guts of trespassing into the territory of the monkey race. Who are you? After the great sage equal to heaven had awakened, he had returned to the base of the monkey race. When the living beings of the monkey race caught sight of this extremely powerful being of the monkey race appearing, they were naturally startled. I'm from the human race. You're the great sage equal to heaven? Lin Fan asked. This old monkey is the great sage equal to heaven. The metal rod in the hands of the great sage equal to heaven gave off a godly aura, and was filled with an unparalleled battle intent. This wasn't something to look down upon. Lin Fan realized that the strength of the great sage equal to heaven wasn't weak at all. But, by the looks of it, he didn't seem to have any grudges or anything towards Lin Fan. That had Lin Fan heaving out a breath of relief. Great sage equal to heaven, I am only passing by. I do not have any intention of doing anything to the monkey race. Lin Fan said. The great sage equal to heaven looked at Lin Fan, your strength is decent. Come fight with me for a round. What? All of a sudden, Lin Fan was stunned. Fight your mother. Didn't yours truly just pass through this place, and that was all? Why did it have to come to this? But at this moment, the great sage equal to heaven raised his rod and slammed out at Lin Fan. This single rod brought with it an extraordinary might, as though it could destroy everything in the world. Bam! Lin Fan blocked instantly and felt his hands getting sore from the strike. Thankfully, his strength had just risen. Otherwise, he might have been slammed to death by this fella just like this. Use your mouth and not your hands. Anyone who passes by is a visitor. Is this how the monkey race treats your visitors? Lin Fan exclaimed out. This mother CKER truly didn't make any sense at all. Great! The great sage equal to heaven yelled out madly. Disregarding Lin Fan's complaints entirely, he struck out once more. F***CK. Lin Fan felt that this monkey was really way too much now. This was some overbearing bullying. At this moment, Lin Fan fought out with the great sage equal to heaven. However, he could feel as though the great sage equal to heaven was reigning in his strength and did not unleash all his powers. Otherwise, given Lin Fan's own cultivation state, there should be no way he could hold out until now. Great, this is the first time I'm feeling this great after awakening. Ha ha ha, after a long time, the great sage equal to heaven finally came to a stop. Human, you're pretty good. Lin Fan's hands and legs were feeling slightly numb right now. However, there was nothing much other than that. Thank you for your praises. However, he could tell that this great sage equal to heaven wasn't as berserk as the ancestral Buddha and the others. He was quite a righteous man. I've seen beings of the human race in the past. But, for someone of the human race to be as strong as yourself, now that's pretty rare. The great sage equal to heaven said. Lin Fan chuckled out. Didn't this sentence just imply that there was no one strong from the human race? However, that was a fact. What else could they do about it? That fight with you earlier on was only to relive some pleasures of battling. Since you're passing by here, how about taking a rest here, and I'll have my people hold a welcome feast for you? The great sage equal to heaven offered. The monkey race had nothing to do with the secular world out there. There were quite a number of powerful beings from the monkey race. At the same time, there were quite a number of them who wanted to fight for supremacy as well. But, after the descent of the great sage equal to heaven, he defeated all of those ambitious ones immediately. There was no need for the monkey race to fight with the thousands of races. All they had to do was to secure this place of sanctuary for themselves. My thanks then, Lin Fan replied. He had not expected to meet this friendly monkey race. But, since that was the case, he should just stay here. But, when he caught sight of the food prepared by the monkey race, Lin Fan was slightly taken aback. Did monkeys these days eat meat or something? The entire table was filled with meat dishes. During this feast, the great sage equal to heaven sat up above. There were a couple of powerful beings from the monkey race seated beside him as well. They all had quite the favorable impression of this human, the main reason being that the human race hadn't killed anyone from the monkey race. However, Lin Fan knew that was also because the human race had mainly been stuck within the Xuanwang world the entire time, and could not make it over to the ancient saint world. At this moment, the powerful beings of the monkey race around him were extremely passionate towards Lin Fan. And towards them, Lin Fan was all smiles as well. Great sage, is this what you guys eat normally? Lin Fan asked. Right now, this world was pretty dangerous. There would definitely be good out of making friends with a few more powerful beings. If he had known some powerful beings earlier on, he wouldn't have had to fight so badly as he had when the bald monk brought people to ambush him previously. That's right, unless these foods aren't to your liking, The great sage looked at Lin Fan perplexedly. These foods were made out of the most valuable ingredients. These were portions that were carved out from the most delicious parts of top-grade ancient beasts. It's not that, just that, don't you guys eat bananas normally? Lin Fan asked. Banana, what's a banana? The great sage was stunned. All the other powerful beings of the monkey race nearby were equally confused, wondering what this human was talking about. Normally, they did not fight or engage in politics with others. Therefore, they led a life of leisure. But, they were pretty particular towards seeking out good food. However, as for this thing that the human had mentioned, let alone see it, they hadn't even heard of it before. Holy FCK, to think that they wouldn't even know of bananas as monkeys. If that's the case, they probably don't even know of peaches then. Seems like I'll have to depend on these to establish a good relationship then. And Oakville be in .c ohm. Thereafter, Lin Fan chuckled out, just nice. I've got some of these delicacies. I'll take some out to share with you guys then. Lin Fan entered Earth and took out a huge bunch of bananas and peaches. What are these? When the great sage caught sight of these, his face was puzzled all of a sudden. All of the surrounding powerful beings of the monkey race were equally baffled. They truly hadn't seen this before. All of you can come and have a try, Lin Fan said. He then took over a single banana and demonstrated how to peel the skin open before he ate it up. At this moment, the monkey race beings were learning to do the same from Lin Fan. When they tasted their first mouthful, all of their expressions turned somewhat strange. What's this? Even though there are no powers to it, this taste. It's as though it was prepared just for us from the heavens. When one of the monkey race beings bit down on his first mouthful, he shouted out. His face was ecstatic as though he had just discovered something incredible. The great sage gave it a taste as well. But, this single mouthful had his face filling up with a myriad of expressions. He then looked around at everything. He was in love so deeply that he could barely part from them. Lin Fan, what are these? The great sage grabbed some peaches in his hands and asked. Lin Fan smiled out calmly before replying, Great sage, those are peaches. They are delicious. Peaches. The great sage grabbed the things in his hands as his heart was surging with a sense of gushing emotions. Compared to those meats on the table, these were way more delicious. Everyone, there's no need to rush. I've still got many more here. In fact, you can even plant them at this place of yours. Lin Fan said. What? They can be planted? The face of the great sage was taken aback as his expression turned excited. Even though he had been through countless of eras, every single era was just akin to swimming through time for him. Since they did not have any contest with the other races, he had long gotten used to an average, simple life, despite the awakenings time after time. But right now, these bananas and peaches truly had the great sage thoroughly drawn in. Lin Fan smiled out faintly and pointed out with his finger. Instantly, the seeds of bananas and peaches lined the entire base of the monkey race. The connate elements of wood and water started churning out at this moment. The seeds germinated, and in a short period of time, they started blossoming out brilliantly. When the living beings of the monkey race caught sight of this, they started clamoring in excitement. The things that this human had taken out were simply way too mysterious in their eyes. Ding! Monkey race's impression level raised. Endless friendship regardless of age. The moment Lin Fan heard the notification of the system, his heart leapt with joy. To think that his relationship with the monkey race would have been raised just like that so easily.